Welcome back, everyone, to day 5 of Amplify Your Message here with Blue Talks. I am your host, Laura Lake, and before I introduce my co-host over there, wearing our unintentional but totally coordinating shirts to celebrate Valentine's Day today, I want to share a little bit about me, and then Abby, I'll ask you to share a little bit about you. And while you're sharing, I'm going to go to Facebook and start sharing this feed so that it's in the group. So,
Awesome.
for those who've never met me, I am Laura Lake. What I stand for is courageous connection. My background story is that I've been through a lot of mental health issues. I almost died 7 times. And so I learned a lot inside and out of what mental health really means. I would take that into my past career of engineering and architecture. And then once I got into the realm of entrepreneurs, I was like, wait, there's a lot of people like me here and they need support too. What is it that they're really struggling with? Stories? Oh, I've been there. I was told I'd never be a writer, and now I am. So I'm using all of that experience to help people like us, and of course, our guests today and our audience, those people that want to share their message, to do it in a way that actually connects with themselves and their audience. So, Abby, go ahead, share
Yes.
who you are, and then I will go share it on our Facebook page.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. And I'm so excited to be here on St. Valentine's Day, one of my personal favorite days of the year. I am Abby Teixeira. I am in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And yeah, my story goes just very quickly. I am a complex trauma survivor. I'm also in recovery from addiction over a decade now. And based off of all of that, it's become my life's work to bring my own personal journey and message to the world. Because similar to you, Laura, I recognize that contrary to what I believed in the past, I'm definitely not the only one that has gone through the things that I had gone through. And there's so many people out there that are really, really suffering in silence with not enough voices that they can relate to, and examples and role models that they can look to and say, hey, like if that person, can do it, I can. And so I've kind of taken upon myself to become the role model I wish I always had, as a young girl. And so that has led me down the path of becoming a speaker, an author, a writer. I'm also a women's transformational coach, specifically trauma recovery, and I work with survivor moms like myself. And big part of my life, I'm a mama. I have 4 beautiful young kids, 6 and under, so that keeps me definitely on my toes. And they are watching me. They're watching me build my dream. They're watching me go out and get uncomfortable and talk and speak and all the things. And I feel so happy and proud that they can look at their mom as an example of what it looks like to pursue your dreams and to step into your purpose, boldly and unapologetically. So that's a little bit about myself, and I'm super, super happy to be here, and I can't wait to interview our amazing guest today.
Awesome. Marty, I see you there. If you're ready to join us, just give me a thumbs up. I always love to ask, welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much. And I am so fascinated listening. Abby, I grew up in Red Deer, just down the road from you.
Yeah, we were just there last weekend for my daughter's cheer conference.
There you go. Small world. No matter where you are, it's a small world.
Yeah.
I know so many people in the Red Deer area.
Yeah.
I've never been to Alberta.
You need to come.
Okay, so Marty, I think you got a little bit of the secrets backstage before we started today, but I'm hoping you'll still play with me. I have 1 page left in my journal, and I'm using it for today, and then I get to write a new one. So I like to start every interview off with a question, which you've answered before. But when I go back in my notes, I know they won't be the same words. So here's my question, Marty. If you could have other people describe you in just 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be?
True to myself. That's maybe too many words. So maybe ethical, if I'm looking for just one word, ethical. Compassionate, and fun.
Compassionate. I wish I could write faster. Fun. So I'm going to use all of the words that you used because really it's the energy behind the words. But then when I do my full spreadsheet stuff, I'll just put the 3 words with notes. So you said true to myself or ethical. So the true to myself, ethical, compassionate, and fun. How do those words and concepts, how do they play a role in the core message that you have for people?
Well, I really believe that, to me, being true to yourself means knowing what your values are and sticking to them, even when it might be not the popular thing to do, or it may be not the easiest thing to do. And when I talk to people, I want to be authentic. I want people to know who I am. I want people to know that I'm not going to be this way in one environment and this way in another environment and tell somebody else this story. I want to be seen as that person that is dependable, reliable, consistent, ethical, like follows my own values. I think that's so important, because I think there's so much in the world today that we can't take for granted. We don't know what's happening, right? And so I think that's really important. The compassionate part, I just think everybody should be compassionate and have empathy for other people, including people that don't agree with you or that you don't agree with them. But at least make the effort to see where they're coming from so that you can understand them better. And then fun. I love being fun. I love being around fun people. I think joy is something that we don't spend enough time cultivating today. I think we're so hustle bustle, get things done, that we forget to just, whatever joy means. If it's going out in the pasture and playing with the horses on my lunch break that I get to decide as an entrepreneur, but that brings me joy. Whether it's travel or whatever it is, finding that fun and joy in life makes everything worthwhile.
Ugh. I think we had this conversation before, but joy and love and that whole energy of like expansion and openness, following that was one of the most impactful things I've ever done in my entire life. It has taken me out of the deepest, darkest places I've ever been in. And it continues to feed me energy and my soul on the good days. So yes, completely agree.
Because you can't, I think that's so important. You can't control you can have a mindset for how a day is going to turn around, but, you can get bad news. You can have a health issue one day. You can have, your kids could get sick. Who knows what's going to happen throughout the day? And you have to have that inside you to carry you through. And definitely survivors who are dealing with, trauma responses and trauma bonds and all this kind of stuff. Overcoming addiction, overcoming eating problems, health issues. I think you got to have that joy, because if not, life just becomes dreary. And who wants to live a dreary life? That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
So if you could like package this up into this beautiful little Valentine's Day heart with a bow kind of message, since we're doing that today, what is it that you would say is that nice, neat little, like clear, here's my message. Like, this is really what I want people to know and feel.
You have the power to make your life experience the way you want it to be.
Oh,
and if I really believe that. I mean, you can't, like I said, you can't control the external stuff, but you can control how you respond to it and how you make changes and how you adjust and adapt and all that stuff. And even in really dark times, I mean, you can still find things to feed your soul, to make you feel good, to help you build your resilience and travel through tough times.
Ooh, resilience has come up a lot lately. Can you give us your definition of what resilience is?
I think resilience is the ability, kind of what I just said, not to pretend that things don't happen or to pretend everything's great. Oh, I'm so happy all this negative stuff is happening, but to be able to say, I know I have the capability to get through this. I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to be better coming out the other end.
That's what I'm hearing behind all of that is building your self-trust, building your self-awareness, building your self-confidence, even your self-worth. All of those concepts have come up this week as well. So I love that you're bringing it together. Thanks.
I would love to hear, Mardi, about, because you talk about being true to yourself and really aligned with your values. And, for a lot of people, when you ask them that question, it's not a very common question that you get asked. It's like, what are your values? And I guess I'll ask, and I know that because I've asked people that, and then they're like deer in headlights, right? Because I feel like in order to discover what your values are, you need to know who you are first and foremost, right? And so that's a journey of self-discovery. And for myself, for example, as a survivor, like who I thought I was not who I actually was, right? I became somebody that I needed to be to survive. And so that's been a journey of self-discovery, who I really am underneath all that. And through that has come what my values are and who I align to and what I align to. So I'd kind of love to hear your journey with that, what that's looked like for you.
Yeah, sure, Abby. I'd be happy to share that. So I started, I had a great life. I mean, I had a great childhood. I was adopted, but when I was very young, I had like I said, great life with my parents. My mom was very ill all through my life, and she passed away when I was in university. I was going to U of A in Edmonton, and my mom passed away, and then my dad passed away just less than a year after that. So I struggled with, how to deal with that. And being in university, I know I drank too much. That was my way of coping with it. There wasn't like, let's go to a therapist kind of wasn't the thing in the 90s. It was more, especially for my age group, it was like, let's just go out and stay busy. And so I did that. Realized that wasn't where I wanted to go. Yeah, I finished a couple of university degrees and then got married. Wasn't a bad relationship, but wasn't a good relationship. So I went through divorce, married my second husband, moved down here to Texas from Canada. And we had a great life together until he had a massive stroke in 2010 and never really recovered. I mean, he was at home, non-ambulatory, and had very limited speech. And then he passed away in 2017. And when I think about this, Abby, looking back, everything that I did throughout my life positioned me to handle the issue that I was facing at that time, like dealing with my parents' death and caring. I had limited responsibility for caring with my parents, but it helped me to prepare myself for how to deal with my husband, being his caregiver. And I worked at a brain injury unit, so I was able to help with the cognitive issues around the stroke. And then in my professional career, dealing with all the clients I was dealing with their struggles as an executive coach, communication, conflict resolution, it all just kind of snowballed and helped me really crystallize that I want to be that support person, but not the person that everybody depends on, the person that helps everybody learn to depend on themselves. And so that, I think all the negative things in life were negative when they were happening, but looking back now, I see how they created this path and how my values just sort of fell into place from that path. That was a very long answer. I'm sorry, but
don't apologize. That was amazing. I love that. And that brought me to my next question is, who would you say has been the most, because you talked a little bit about your parents, and who would you say has been the most influential people or person in your life that has really shaped and molded, who you are and your values and all of that kind of stuff?
It's probably very stereotypical, but I would have to say my parents. Number one, I saw my mom she had multiple bouts of cancer and other issues throughout, and we knew from very young age that our mom was sick. Like it wasn't a hidden secret or anything. And just seeing her every day, getting up, being positive, everybody that worked, she tried to work part-time. Everybody that knew her loved her. And I still get people, this is like 30 years after her death, no more, 40 years after her death. People still come up to me when I go home and go, I just love working with your mom. Like she was so positive, even when she was dealing with so much. And my dad was an RCMP officer. He was a staff sergeant. He was very different than my mom. He was a lot more like military, do this, do that. But he had unwavering faith in what I could do. He never said, you're a girl, you can't do that. It was always, you can do whatever you want to do. And that was a really clear message all through my life. And I really think that set me up for moving forward.
I feel like, just in what you described, I feel a lot of resiliency that really created a lot of, not only did you witness it in your mom, but then that actually like kind of rubbed off on you, that, you know, prepared you for all the things that happened in your life moving forward, and kind of the attitude and all of that kind of stuff. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And I admire people who have come through trials and tribulations and are able to then share that information with other people and have used it for growth experiences. And I am by no means dealing with a lot of the issues that everybody else has. So my story is not this, like, I don't tell it to be like a boohoo story. I tell it as you tell yours, when just listening to you, that this is a way to reach other people and say, hey, you've got this, you can do this. And that's really the message I want to share with everybody. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I describe that, Mardi, as speaking from your sparkle.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that there really is a big difference between somebody who has a story and they still feel more of the pain within their story than they do the love,
Right.
or they're coming from the mindset of being still the victim or the survivor without shifting that mindset into what I call being the champion of it.
Yeah.
So now it's like, I'm not sharing it to help me heal. I'm sharing it because all these other people are trying to heal, and I have the next step or one of the steps on their journey for them. And if I don't share it, then I'm denying them part of their path. I'm telling them they have to stay stuck. It's like, no, I can't be that person.
And Laura, I have to say something. I love that distinction that you made, the difference between the victim, the survivor. But I've heard a lot of survivors talk in a way that's very disparaging of people that are still in the victim stage or still dealing with the stress and the trauma. And I love that term of speaking from a champion perspective, where you're saying, you're really providing that encouragement and that practical steps, but you're also honoring the person where they are in their own journey.
Yeah.
I was a domestic violence client advocate for many, many years. And unfortunately, I saw a lot of people in that industry that were like, well, just get over it, just leave, just get out of there. Why are you going back? What's wrong with you? And that's not helpful, and it's not effective, and it's just shame. It's victim shaming. And that should not, unfortunately, that does go on. We hear it in communities all the time, out in the community and in professional groups. And it hurts me when I hear people saying that, because we should be honoring people going through struggles for where they are and what they've accomplished. Yeah.
I also like to make a distinct separation between the event that happened. So I'm going to use your example of the domestic violence, right? You share a story with another domestic violence. And so then both of you kind of go, we have a shared experience. I'm going to impart all of the feelings that I had onto your story, when in reality, your experience is the emotion of the story. Right? Your emotional perception of it is going to be different than my emotional perception, which is different than Abby's emotional perception. And if I start projecting and like putting my emotions from my experience on somebody else, then that's where the miscommunication lies. But if we talk about how that situation made me feel, and you say that you feel differently, now we can actually understand the other person and treat them as a human being instead of treating them as A plus B equals C. Here's exactly how all domestic violence. No.
Yeah.
They're humans. So bringing in those values, the truth that you mentioned at the very beginning.
Absolutely. And like I said, this has kind of given me even some clarification. So thank you both for this conversation, because so I always use, when I'm coaching my clients, the one thing I always think about is, before I say something, am I starting to tell my story, or am I honoring their story? And so I think that is so important, because if I catch myself telling my story, then I have to say, in my head, why am I doing this? And 9 times out of 10, it's me wanting to share something about me, which has nothing to do with the coaching realm. So I can just be quiet and listen at that point in time.
I love that. And what you shared, just kind of going back to your story about working with the DV clients. Obviously it takes a great deal of empathy, to work with, those kind of people, women, people in general, and without losing yourself to, kind of the sadness around it, and and wanting to save people, all of that kind of stuff. Can you chat about how you were able to kind of create boundaries around that, and how you were able to kind of protect your energy when you were in that field, not let it kind of bring you down or get you down? Because I'm pretty sure you probably witnessed a lot of really heartbreaking stories and situations, and so I'd love to kind of hear what that looked like for you.
I think that's a really important thing. And we do, as part of my training, we did a lot of work on boundary setting with clients. And I always, at that time, we didn't, again, this was a few years ago before coaching was a big thing, but we were in the organization I work with, which doesn't exist anymore, but in the organization I worked with, we were all assigned a mentor. And that was a person who was in the organization, usually one of the therapists that ran the group supports. And we had a weekly check-in call and a chance to just download all of that frustration, sometimes anger at what had happened. And, there obviously we had support if a client was, unfortunately, I had it happen, killed by an intimate partner. So those kind of things, those protections for us were in place. But for me, I think I always started out the sessions with each client with, what's one thing that you're really proud of yourself accomplishing this since our last session? And then the end of the session was always, what's one positive step you can take moving forward? So containing the session within kind of that positive, and then the difficulty, the challenge, and then the positive at the end sort of created I'm going to say a bubble for that information. And then I was able to kind of hold that bubble together and it didn't, come apart where all the negativity kind of floated to the surface. But I think a lot of people going through any kind of trauma experience, I really believe that these people, they are seeking improvements. They are seeking to become stronger and more empowered. And like I said, just working with them to find where that is in their life, that brought me joy. I'm going to say it. It brought me joy, and it brought me a sense of I'm helping to help people. Not I'm helping people, but I'm helping them to become who they want to be, whatever they define it as.
Wow, I love that. I love the bubble scenario, because it's like, it's optimism, right? Like in such a dark, kind of heavy situation and topic, to be able to find the glimmers and the little sparkles in the situation, I think is so beautiful. I'm sure that you impacted the people that you worked with during that time in your life.
Thank you, Abby. And I do divorce coaching now, and that's the same way I structure my sessions, because these are also clients that are dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety and fear and anger and everything else. So we do that. I use that same formula now. So it just sums it up. It just contains it nicely, I think.
I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier, because I feel like it has an impact on like everything that you've chosen since then. You mentioned working in the brain injury unit at one point. Did you get to experience how people have shifted and some of the lessons that they needed to learn, or what was the term we used yesterday that I liked? Redirection. Yeah. Lessons or redirection.
Yeah. So a little bit of background on that one. I was actually hired by a school district to do behavioral consultations, and we set up a special program for children who had an act of violence on a campus and also had a concurrent diagnosed learning disability or behavioral disability. And so diagnosis, I'm sorry. And so what ended up happening, and this is kind of a weird situation, but we became housed in a mental health facility, and we were separate, and the kids came, just like they would in a regular school. It was set up like a little school scenario. But one of the benefits was there was a brain injury school within the hospital itself. And so I was able to work with with the principal of that school and do some work with adults. And it brought me a real clear understanding of neuroplasticity and how we can learn to adapt even in situations where there's no verbal, there's no ability to speak. Perhaps they're non-ambulatory, or perhaps they have some kind of other neurological disorder, tremors or spasms or seizures, whatever it may be, that these people were so committed to redeveloping skills of language and movement. It was so inspiring. And, to see how hard these people worked just made me so excited to be a part of that when I got to go work at the brain injury, I was like, yay, I got to go up there. Because you just couldn't walk away and not feel like, oh my gosh, I have such faith in humanity that, because these people are struggling through these huge physical and mental health situations, and just shining, just everything was shining in that whole environment. It was amazing.
Wow.
That just sounds like more inspiration and motivation to continue on that track of resilience. Mm-hmm. You're just like bombarded with the miracles of it every day.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, I got goosebumps when you were telling me, because I'm thinking, even when I do a meditation sometimes and you come out of the meditation and you open your eyes, the whole world seems to be brighter. And it's like you're in the Matrix. It's like slow-mo. Oh my God.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, Marty, would you say that you always knew you kind of wanted to help people? Is that when can you remember that you thought to yourself, or maybe realized that you really wanted to, because it seems like you've had a lot of opportunities where you've helped people, right? And I feel like it takes, a special kind of person to really be able to do that work, right? And do that work and still find the glimmers and the joy through it, right? Because I know, as caregivers or people who are who are serving other people, sometimes it can get really, especially when it's things like trauma or like brain injury, all that kind of stuff. People can really get kind of buried or drowned in the sadness of it all, and just kind of take the opposite outlook on it, and more so why is this all the suffering and all this stuff? But it seems like when you're sharing, you're just joyful and and so it was oh, she's got this heart for really truly helping people and finding the joy and doing it joyfully. When do you think that kind of started for you, or that you can remember?
Okay, I'm going to say something that probably sounds exactly opposite to what you just said, Abby, but I never intended to do any of this stuff. I honestly never intended. I grew up in that environment with mom not being well, and went to university. I actually did a degree in agriculture. I was going to be a veterinarian. That was my plan. That was my big plan. And then up in Canada, it's a quota system, right? So you got to have these really super high grades to get into.
Yes.
So I didn't have that grade. So then my plan was, well, maybe I'll go into the RCMP, because that's, I admired my dad and I thought about that. And then I thought, I don't really want to do that. So somebody said, well, why don't you do a teaching degree? So I said, oh yeah, well, what the hell? Let's just do a teaching degree. And so I guess, and I really loved teaching. So I taught grade 1 and 2 for many, many years. I loved it. Then I went into the behavior consulting. But I would have to say, I took a mediation training. And I think when I started doing mediation and helping people solve conflicts, I think that is really when I decided that is where my focus was, that I wanted to continue with that. So I would have been about 30 before that kind of kicked in, that's really what I wanted to do. But it really wasn't until I started the executive coaching that I really drilled down and started really studying, like I say, neuroplasticity and neurolinguistics and NLP work and all of the foundations for helping people shift their mindset. So that would have been, in 2000-ish that I actually really got going on that one. So
Wow.
I don't know that I can pinpoint it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something I ever thought. It wasn't something like when I was a kid, I was like, gosh, I'd really like to help people. That really never crossed my mind at all.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for sharing that journey. And life is so funny sometimes, like I love that you shared that you had zero intention to like kind of do this work. It just kind of happened the way it happened. And you shared like how when you did the mediation stuff, was there anything specific that really stood out to you that one day you were like, okay, like this is my jam, like I'm really aligned to this? Like, was there a specific experience, or was it just kind of like overall just experiencing what the outcome is of being able to help people through a really difficult situation?
I think that's what it was, is having that sense of I can support people in creating their own solution, their own settlement, as opposed to being a consultant where I tell them how to do it, they do it and they get success. But then when the next problem comes up, they don't necessarily know how to deal with it. Where I feel like whenever you give people tools and then let them complete the project, you're doing for me, not for everybody, but in my opinion, you're really setting them up for something that they can then carry with them. So that's, I don't know, Abby, if that answers the question, but that really was it. Yeah.
Yeah. Love that journey. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay. I want to go back again for a moment. You mentioned you kind of skipped over it. And I love when people kind of skip over things, because I'm like, there's always something there. So you mentioned that somebody else had told you, hey, maybe education, and you got into it. You mentioned teaching grade 1, but then this is the part you kind of skimmed over. You went from teaching grade 1 to getting into behavior training. And it was from there that you started to do this, that, and the other thing. What I heard from that was that this was the first choice that you made for you. It was to go from the grade 1 to the behavior training. So can you tell us a little bit about more where you were in your own mind? Like, why did you leave the grade 1 to get into behavior? What was that inspiration?
It's really simple. That one I know. I can answer that one directly. Yes. It was because I saw kids with particularly behavior disorders that were that were labeled in the school system, maybe in grade 1, and that label carried on. And it didn't matter if those children's behavior stayed the same, got worse, got better. They still had that same label and that same level of support. And a punishment-based behavioral program in a school system is like zero effective, because the kids that it works with are the kids that just acted out once. You take them up to the principal's office, they get talked to, and they're like, oh my gosh, I never want to do that again. If you have a kid with a behavior disorder, they go up to the principal and talk, and they go to the principal, yeah, whatever. And they're going to go right back into the room and do it again, because it's not something they choose to do. It's a pattern of behavior that gets them whatever the result is that they wanted. So being able to go back and look at what is making a person use a particular behavior, whether they're a kid or an adult, and then helping them discover a better way to get the same result that they want. I just love doing that. And it just all came together with that. And seeing kids go from being, oh my God, when teachers are splitting up kids at the end of the year, I don't think this is a secret, right? For the next grade, everybody's going, we can't put those two in the room because that teacher's going to have a problem because they're both hell on wheels, those two kids, right? So having kids be successful in managing behavior in the classroom so that they're able to go into the next year and the teachers go, I would love to have that child in my classroom. Or, maybe not love, but I don't mind having that child in my classroom. Like, it depends on what the reputation is. Like, that just made me feel so good. And it also made me feel good when teachers were able to say, I don't feel stressed anymore about coming into my room. I enjoy coming into my classroom. I love interacting with this child. That, like, to me, it's a win-win for everybody.
Okay, follow up to what I've been hearing. I'm just going to repeat back to you what you told me earlier your message was, and see how closely it relates to what you just told us. Here's your message. You have the power to respond or adjust or adapt and feed yourself. But do you see how you kind of skipped over that? Because to you, it's so natural. It's so easy. It's just like logical. But really, that was one of the defining moments that got you interested, that you made the choice. And then you started to do things from there. So I want to celebrate that moment with you, to be like, yeah, Mardi.
Yeah.
That's one of your moments that was like, this is my path.
I don't think I ever really actually pinpointed it. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate both of you. Thank you for helping me with that.
That's my favorite thing to do with my clients, and like just all these conversations. It's like, it's there, but it's just so easy for you that you don't notice. And I'm like, you're not talking about it. It's something you're holding in. It's like, oh, there's gems there. That's where the sparkle is. And I get really excited. So yay.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for the insight.
Okay, Mardi, I also want to be mindful of time. So, so many questions. First, I do want to know, because today is Love Day. I don't really call it Valentine's. To me, it's just all about love. I want to know what it is that you love about the work that you do now.
Oh my gosh, one thing. I think I've said it already. I love seeing, I work mostly with women, but some men now. I've started to work with men as well through divorce. I love seeing them go from feeling like, what is going on? And I am being victimized by the legal system, by the financial system, by the court system, by my spouse, by everybody, by my family, and have them turn around and say, I've got control over this. I've got options, and I can make choices. And to me, again, it's going to come back to my same message, but that's really what brings me, that's really what I love about this, is helping people understand that in virtually any situation in life, you do have some sort of choices. They may not be always the choices you want to have, but there are choices to make, and you can evaluate them and then make the one that's possible, that's in your best interest.
Awesome. So how do we find you? And of course, what is your favorite way to communicate?
So my favorite way to communicate is always face-to-face. I just really enjoy that. I know it's not possible though, because I work with clients all over the place, but the best way to reach out to me is through one. I have two different websites. My general one is www.poscs.com. And the one specially for women is Divorce Coach for Women. So that's the number 4, divorcecoachforwomen.com.
Awesome. And then I do like to hold the space at the end of an interview, just in case there's anything on your head or in your heart that you need to share. So what would you love to leave people with?
There are tough times in life. I think, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Everybody's going to go through tough times in life, but you don't have to do things alone. Find a community. They can be friends, they can be family, they can be professionals, but find a community and don't be afraid to share your story, because even if you're not to the end of your story, which none of us are, right? Because every day we wake up, we're writing new parts to our story. But even if you don't feel you're through all the troubles, you're farther ahead than somebody else is. Like you said that earlier, Laura. And I think, Abby, you said it as well. And so don't be afraid to be a support for somebody who maybe is a little bit earlier in their journey than you are. Because when we support each other, just everything gets a lot better in the world.
Thank you so much, Mardi. You're just such an interesting person. We could be here for another hour because I had so many other questions, but
well, I so appreciate this opportunity. And Laura, nice to talk to you again. And Abby, wonderful to meet you. And funny that we just grew up not far down the road from each other.
All the synchronicities, I will take them. Thank you.
I will call this the official close of the interview, but what we're doing is we're taking the final few minutes of us being together just as a nice little recap to share some of our favorite moments. So Mardi, I'm going to start with you and we'll go around. What was something that really stood out to you in our conversation today?
I think both of you questions around why do I do what I do, and how did I get here, really helped me to clarify this. And I thank you both for that, because that origin story is really important. And you're right, I do skip over it, Laura. So, and Abby. So thank you both very much for that. That was a real highlight for me.
Aww.
So that's totally selfish. I'm sorry, but it was.
I'm just going to take that clip and I'll be like, I'm going to use that on my own social media.
Use it as you will.
I just really appreciate just your joyful spirit. You know, like you've definitely overcome a lot. You've had a lot of adversity, you know, in your own way, and through life, and you're here beaming and really excited and joyful for the work that you're doing in the world. That's so important, and I think it's very inspiring. So thank you. It's very refreshing.
Thanks, Happy.
Okay, I guess I have so many takeaways, but I do have a question just because it came up a couple times. You used the term non-ambulatory. What does that mean? I meant to ask you earlier.
Oh, he was not able to move. He couldn't walk or move on his own.
Oh, okay. I'm learning new words.
I was in and out of hospitals for 8 years. So sorry, I just picked up medical jargon there. But yeah.
Just natural to you.
Yeah.
Meaningful to somebody else would be like, oh, that's new. Okay. So one of the things I really did love was the way that you worded your message. You said you have the power to respond. You just used a bunch of words to respond, adjust, adapt. And so I just wrote them as a list. But I also liked the feed yourself part, because when we think of the word power, we still have this connotation of, you know, there's this one person who's in power just telling everybody what to do. But in this way, you're using the word power for the self and not making it more of an empower, but just like you have power, plain and simple. How are you going to wield that power? And you can wield it for good. So I like the way that you brought those in together. So,
thank you. I have to tell you, I'm not a big fan of the whole empowered, because to me, that seems like something external, whereas power resides within you. And that's just me going off on a tangent. But I get so tired when I hear things like, oh, well, I'm going to make sure that you feel empowered. Well, you know what? That's none of your damn business if I feel empowered or not. It's my power. So
we'll leave that for the next interview, because we'll definitely dive into that.
Oh, yeah. We have about a minute left, but I did look it up because I do love a good definition. Oh my God. So I looked up the meaning of the word empower, because you said it feels external. And the definition, the first one here, says to give someone, in brackets, the authority or power to do something. And that's totally right. It is an external thing. I never thought of it. I'm like, I kind of like the word, and I didn't know why I had a little bit of resistance to it. You just said it. It's because it feels external.
But I don't think that's how most people use it. I think most people use it. And it's just, I don't know where I picked that up, but I heard it on something, maybe a TEDx or something, but I know that I heard it from somebody, and that got me really thinking. This was several years ago. So yeah.
Well, the second definition is to make someone, in brackets, stronger and more confident, but it's the same kind of thing. You could make yourself, or you could make another person. And I think it really is the context of that. So that's eye-opening. I appreciate that. I'm going to listen for it now.
Love it.
Thank you so much, Mardi. This has been a delight, as always.
Thank you both, Abby and Laura. Really appreciate this opportunity to have a chat with you this morning.
Thank you.
I hope to see you again soon.
Take care.
Bye, Mardi. So we do have our next guest in the background. Rob, just give me a thumbs up if you're ready to join us. Oh, that's even better. I got like this in the background. Are you my kind of people? Are you high energy?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, we'll see.
You think so? So, Rob, how I love to start off every interview is with a question just to shake out those pre-programmed responses we tend to see in interviews like this.
Yeah, sure.
Because I want to get to know you, Rob, as a human being.
Well, I want to get to know you. So there you go.
Awesome. So here's my question.
Yep.
If you could have other people describe you in just 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be?
He serves others.
Oh, you got a phrase. Okay. He serves others. See, sometimes it's interesting. People will pick individual words to just describe themselves, and other people like you have this phrase. So it's the energy behind it. He serves others.
Yeah.
So then here's the follow-up.
Okay.
To take those 3 words or this singular concept, he serves others, how does that play a key role in the core message that you have for people?
So it's actually the value that drives me every day.
Yeah.
And I think it's the energy that people see from me. And, you know, look at you, we're all magnets. I'm sure you'll agree. What we put out is what we get back. So if I have a mindset of a servant leadership principles, or I have a mindset to serve others and to give back, then I'm going to get that magnetic energy back. And that's really what it's all about for me. I'm in the prime of my life now. I'm living my best life. I'm mid-60s, and now it's time to give back. It's time to give back some of the lessons I learned, and to the next generation of leaders in business and life.
So what are some of the lessons that you're trying to teach people right now?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I
know.
Yeah. So I am so fortunate and grateful to be able to travel the globe and share my message on stages all around the world. But the whole preface behind this was, and I guess I probably should sort of tell my origin story. It was about 10 or 11 years ago that I had a life event that rocked me and changed my life, and it changed my perspective. I lost my wife suddenly to a brain aneurysm. She was gone in 1 second. We were married 32 years, amazing life together. We actually met her in a blind date, but asked her to marry me in 2 months. We were married 32 years. It's a great love story. Yeah.
On Valentine's. Oh, that's so sweet.
I wanted to tell that today, and happy Valentine's Day to all you beautiful souls. But I think that moment rocked me, and it changed my perspective. And before that, I talk about give and get a lot, the give and get principle in business. And before that, I was a getter. I was always like, what's in it for me? What can I get? What's in it for me, right? Always. Was the deal good for me? And that event rocked me so bad that I changed my perspective, and I went inside myself, like most people do when something like that happens, and really challenged my why, challenged my true purpose. And that's when I went on a journey for the last decade or so, where I did some enormous amount of personal development, soul searching. And through that process, I switched to a giver. So in business as well, and I focused on love in business. I focused in serving my customers, serving the people under my charge, and giving and not getting. And the crazy thing happened is I became wildly successful the last 10 years of my career. I've just retired after 42 years. And I ran the numbers. You're not going to believe this. It's just when you're talking to business people, I always say this because I ran all the numbers of my career, right? From, the very beginning, and the first 30 years, I did very well. I was successful. There's no doubt about that. But in the last 10 years, when I pivoted to a giver versus a getter, I actually earned 3x the whole 30 years combined.
Nice.
And I was able to retire and do what I'm doing now, which is to actually serve others and give back. So my purpose came full circle when I actually was a giver and not a getter, when I actually had a servant mindset and not a getter mindset. And I think I talk about that a lot on the stages that I'm on. I have a whole talk on the give versus get principle. And I truly believe that it's business and life, right? But I'm just a regular guy that went through his share of stuff, right? And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a guy that went through his stuff. So I like to pass these lessons on, and I've had my share of adversity like everybody else. We all have a story, right, Abby and Laura? Everybody has a story. I'm no different. But I'm a guy that went through and conquered addiction. I'm sober now 31 years today.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And I've gone through depression. I've had thoughts of suicide, and of course, losing my spouse. And those are big events. Those are big life events that you have to go through. So I've done a few things. I wrote a book, first of all, which I published a couple of years ago. I was so grateful. It became a bestseller on Amazon in 24 hours. And the message really is all about adversity and really surrendering to your adversity. And I was able to do a TEDx talk. I'm so grateful for that too, and to share that message on the world stage. And I have a 3-step process to overcome adversity that I share with people on a regular basis. So I've got a couple of things going where I can do the personal development talk and talk about my personal experience and what I call experience, strength, and hope, and give that back to people that may be going through some of the things I went through and some of the challenges that I'm going through. So I share that whenever I can on the stages that I present on. And then the next thing I do is I have really tripled down on what we call physical intelligence. Are you ready for this?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really cool.
I'm taking notes.
Take some notes, write it down. So physical intelligence. So I had this amazing opportunity in the last part of my career. Again, I had 42 years in sales leadership, and high tech. In the last post I had was in London. And the company tapped me to go to London and run that country, turn it around. They had 4 leaders in 3 years. It was a mess. And so I said, what an opportunity. I was, I was like 60 years old. I was like, this is amazing. I had to have this opportunity. So I went there, and 3 weeks later, COVID hit.
Oh.
Are you right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine, here I am in a country where I know nobody. None of my team members have not really met anybody. And I've got to lead that country for 2 years over Zoom. Because I can't go out of my flat. I have an hour a day at best. I'm being called to make sure I'm in my flat. It was quite an experience. It was just my wife, my new wife. And by the way, yes, I have found love again on Valentine's Day. I want to share that. Yes, isn't that wonderful? Yeah, and crazy story. It's a crazy story, and but she's actually a friend of my late wife. So it was, I had known her for many years, and our kids knew each other since 3rd grade. It's an amazing love story. It's from tragedy to triumph, and that's why I share that story, because I know people are going through that with loss, and especially now in the world, what's going on. There's all kinds of negativity. So I share that you can come out of this. So, anyways, I digressed, but. I went to London. I had to lead this country over Zoom, and I met the author of what they call physical intelligence, Claire Davis, and we hit it off right away. And she had an institute over in Europe. It is actually not here in the States yet. It is, because I'm bringing it here, but there's not a lot of people talking about it. So what it is the ability to use your body, is to harness and unleash the chemicals in your body. Positive, and I call it the dose. And there's actually a book just came out, The Dose Effect. Well, I've been using that dose chemical, sort of like the chemical cocktail. That's what I say. So it's dopamine, oxytocin, right, serotonin, and the endorphins. But I get the audience to use their body. So I do breath work, I do body movement, I do dancing, and I do manifesting and closed eye meditation. By doing all that, I can release these chemicals for good and get them off that seesaw of dopamine and cortisol, that fight or flight. So that's another thing that I talk about all over the world. And I've just got off the road from now in Palm Springs, and I was in Atlanta. And it's all about unleashing those chemicals and being able to harness your own body. We have everything we need, right? Everything we need is here. And we just need to harness that and to unleash that. And when we do that, it affects us and our chemicals. But here's the best part, ladies. It affects the people around us. Because again, going back to the first thing I said, we're magnets. If I'm putting out that positive energy, then I'm going to get that back. So, and again, this is all about for life and business. So I transform between the two. And being a leader so long, obviously I talk to leaders all the time, and I coach leaders on this. But this physical intelligence is really cool. It's a cool concept. It's new here to the United States. And I'm bringing it. I'm the only one bringing it to the keynote stage. And I'm partnered with the Physical Intelligence Institute in London. And I'm able to actually do assessments for people live so they can see where they are on their body, right? And how much resilience they have, how much, all that, how much strength and flexibility, all those things that come with living in a peak state, which is what I talk about most. So it's a lot of preamble, but that's sort of where I am. I've got a lot of different things going on, but it's all really to serve people in life and business. And I lived and breathed this. So all I'm doing is bringing my experience. again, I'm not a scientist, but I've been a student of neuroscience now for over a decade, and all the neuroscience backs this up. This is real stuff. It used to be woo-woo. Now it's like, you need this. I figured you'd like that.
No. Okay. I like when people bring up the word woo-woo, because to me, somebody who says woo-woo, woo-woo is just a science that they haven't, I guess, allowed themselves to learn about yet.
Yeah.
And so like different people will use the word in different ways. And I'm like, to me, woo-woo is like the far off in the distance. We are just now starting the scientific data and testing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I won't pay attention to it.
Yeah, well, that's great.
There's so much that we still don't know.
So much. And then, I have a track that I talk about how love in business is actually a competitive advantage.
Yes, it is.
And people look at me, like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? No. And of course, it's not love like a relationship or a partner, but I truly have love in my heart for the people that I worked with, that I worked for, and that worked for me. And they're still friends. And we're talking, some of my closest friends I worked with 30, 40 years ago. And that's a mindset. That is a mindset that you go into a relationship with. If you want a great marriage, you go into give and not get. If you want a great company culture, you go into give and not get. It's so similar now.
Yeah. But it really does start with human beings treating other human beings like human beings, whether it's business, life, the universe, like all of it.
Yeah, it's about having an open heart, right? And it's not a weakness. And there's so many. I grew up, where that was a weakness. And when I first started in business, you never showed emotion. You didn't have empathy. It was, how strong are you, right? And that was all that mattered. And I'll tell you what, when I got to London, it wasn't very long that I realized that I was the person that needed to be there, and that was my true purpose. And I learned more in that business assignment than any other assignment in my career. But I was the right person to be there because I did lead from my heart. And in that moment in time, boy, did they need that.
So I'm going to share some stats with you and why they're so important to this group and this conversation. I work with mental health. Abby has a different aspect of that. I can see you have a different aspect of that too. There was a study done in 2019, right before COVID, where it was basically saying that the general population, 1 in 5 suffered from mental health issues, like depression, anxiety, PTSD.
Yep.
Veterans, service providers, the people that we think of who are the most suffering from this, were 1 in 3.
Yep.
Where do you think entrepreneurs were on that scale? I know, right? It was 1 in 2.
Yeah, I was gonna say 50%
entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And then after COVID, like about 2023, I think is when they did the next study. They had the general population at 1 in 3.
Right.
I can't imagine where the rest of the people have shifted, but just knowing that we've all been through a lot.
Yeah.
We need more of these conversations. We need more of that self-awareness. And I'm going to use Marty's word, the power or even self-empowerment, right?
Yeah.
To take those steps, to learn that about ourselves and realize we can make changes. And it doesn't have to take 10 years.
No, it does not. And I don't wish that. I don't wish those life events on anybody. I don't wish that adversity on anybody, of course. But yes, we have everything we need to not only, I always say, not just survive adversity, but thrive after adversity and come out with even a higher purpose. I am the opposite of a victim mentality. I never was, never will be. I believe that everything I went through was for a reason. And I am here today with you because of what I went through in life. I am the man I am today because of what I went through in life. And I was able to, again, not just survive, but thrive. And as I did that each time when I wrote the book, I had so much time in London, right? How much Netflix and DoorDash can you do? I don't know. I lost track of all the shows I binged, but, I decided to write this book because I felt like there was a sort of an epiphany there where I'm like, I'm here for a reason. I can see what I'm doing. I need to give this message back. Now, here's the funny story about this book writing. I grew up and still have severe learning disabilities. I comprehend very little that I read. I have to read books 4 times. I highlight, I make notes. So my friends back home saying, hey, Rob, how did you write a book? You didn't even read books. So it's a funny story because I actually had to break through that limited belief that I'm not smart enough or I can't write that book. Yeah. And so that was one of the big things for me to go through that barrier and say, look, if I can do it, anybody can do it. It's one of those, one of those true stories, right? Where, and then, it just came to me. I think it was just a moment where it was a little bit of divine intervention. I wrote that book in London, and it was done, published it, and here we are. And I'll tell you what, it is definitely a labor of love, and it's something that I became very mindful of the fact that I had to be 100% vulnerable. I didn't hold back. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told my story as I lived it. And I wanted to do that as a man because men's mental health there. And I have Laura, I'm used to that. I read that study you just cited. That I'm always, because I'm always talking about mental health, right? And men's mental health is insane. And you talk about veterans. We've got 20 veterans a day committing suicide, and this is just, it's getting worse. And COVID accelerated the mental health, what I call the mental health pandemic. We all talk about COVID as a pandemic, and I say that's great. It was, and I think what it turned into was a mental health pandemic. And I'm seeing it. I'm sure you are in your business, and Abby. Everyone has something they're dealing with. That's why I'm on a mission. I am on a mission to really make sure that I at least give some tools that work for me. Again, just as a regular guy that you can relate to. I'm just telling you what I did. I hope you can use it for your benefit. If you learn 1 or 2 things from my talk, I'm going to be so grateful.
Powerful stuff. Thank you so much, Rob, for sharing all of that. Super, super interesting. I kind of wanted to rewind a little bit and just go back to that moment, I guess, the catalyst, as you described it, when you lost your wife so suddenly. And, you kind of you said you went from this mindset of being like a receiver, and then flipping it to wanting to give and serve. Was that like a process that kind of happened overnight, or, because obviously you're dealing with grief and I'm sure like existential crisis, all of the things, right? And so what was that process that really just allowed you to see that you had a greater purpose and that you really were coming from a place where you had received and now you wanted to really do the opposite and actually give and help and all of that kind of stuff? Like, can you share a little bit about what that journey was like for you?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think, like anybody, I went through the process of grief, and I went through that first year was kind of a blur for me. But I will say that it was almost in the moment at her bedside when I had to say goodbye to her, and she took her last breath, July 31st, 2013. And in that moment, I truly believe that I had sort of this moment where I felt, I'm gonna thrive after this because I have built up my resilience through all of the other stuff we went through together, her and I and me. And I really felt that at that moment, that when I stood up and I had to walk out of that room knowing I wasn't going to see her again in this lifetime. I really believe in that moment, I had sort of a internal voice that I was going to be okay, and I was going to be better than okay. And that she was going to be right here with me the whole way. And she still is. And she's part of this house. She's part of my life. She's part of our life. And I really believe that it was in that moment that I called on that resilience that I had developed. Now, over time in business, it really became that give versus get. And it wasn't very long at all, Abby, to tell you the truth. It was just a few months where I sort of looked up and said, wow, this is different. I have a different perspective. And then that's when I said, for some reason, my heart was open enough. And for some reason I said, now it's time to work on myself. Now it's time to not just say it, but I need to go figure this out and get fully immersed in personal development. So that's what I did. And I really got into, peeling back my values, peeling back why I'm here, peeling back what was holding me back, peeling back my limited beliefs. So it wasn't very long at all, Abby. And then I started to, the best part about that was when I made that switch fairly quickly, I started to really thrive even at the end of the first year. And then it just took off after that. But at the end of the first year, I started to really get my mojo back or whatever, and that was really the key for me. So I think it's important that people know that, you've got to go through that process. And of course, Bonnie and I, her name was Bonnie, and I would talk about this when she was alive. We would talk about what would happen and how would we go forward, and to make sure we do this and that, and don't be this and don't do that. And, and we would openly talk about it. So it was something that I was ready for some unknown crazy reason. It was, life happens, right? It happens for you, not to you. And that was something that needed to happen. And I was grateful for the time I had. And that's how I viewed it. And I viewed it as it's part of another part of adversity that I need to conquer.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
So talk to us about speaking now. Like, is that something you did prior to this event? Like, were you speaking, or how did that all happen? Because obviously you're very vibrant and you speak well, and is that something that you were doing previously, or how did that kind of like come about?
Well, great. Again, how life works. So I've been on stage since I was 9 years old. I was a singer and an actor, and all kinds of plays and talent shows. I was always on stage. I loved it. I was an entertainer, and I had a blast doing that. Of course, I had to make a decision. I go to college or do I starve? So I went to college. But I think that it's kind of in my genes where I just love the audience. I go out into the audience. I'm not a person that still stands on the stage. I'm like out there, talking and touching and making sure I connect to the audience. I just love that part. And the bigger the better. So I'm very comfortable on stage, and yes, I'm very energetic on stage, but that's sort of, again, how life and how the universe kind of takes me in this full circle. So here I am in my 60s, where I'm going back into that kind of arena. But I've been speaking, obviously, all of my career as a sales leader, and going in, doing kickoffs and doing QBRs and doing, speaking in front of customers. And I've been speaking my whole life. So this is not something different for me. It's not something I had to learn. But I'm always getting better. I'm always coaching. I'm always trying to do better on stage, always trying to give more. I want to over deliver every time I'm on stage. And that's really important to me. But yeah, to answer your question, it's like, it's a full circle for me. It's like a part of my life. And I'm so grateful to be able to do this again and get back into actually, serving and having fun doing it. And being passionate about it where I'm retired. I'm just like, it's a great thing to do. It's a great retirement plan.
Love that. What's the most impactful talk that you deliver that you love speaking on?
Yeah, well, it's been the PI stuff, physical intelligence stuff, because it's really cool. I mean, it's so exciting to tell you this, because it's cool to see the state of the room change.
Yeah.
So I do one of these things I do for love, oxytocin. We call it the Kate Winslet, the Titanic. So I play the Titanic theme. Yes. Everybody chuckles, and all the guys have to admit they saw Titanic, right? Yeah, I know you saw it. So, right, and so they spread their arms out like Kate, and we do the whole the Kate Winslet, right? the oxytocin goes right over the heart, and all the love in the room, and they're all looking at me like, what did you just do to us? And the whole state just changes in the whole room, right? And the cool part about physical intelligence is, it only takes 8 seconds to change your state. Now, and that studies have proven that, right? So all the neuroscience that Paul Zach's done amazing stuff. The Truth Factor. I don't know if you've read that book. You should get that. Paul Zach, he's an amazing neuroscientist, and I do work with him. I follow him, and he's part of the Physical Intelligence Institute as well. And I think it's really important to note that these things they actually work, and they work in business as well as life. And there are now meetings at Google and Amazon and Zappos that they start the meeting with these body movements. And because, the winter pose or serotonin twist that gives you more collaboration in the life, sense of belonging, right? All these things are not that difficult. You just you got to do them, right? So that's the most impactful talk when when I stand up there and I see the room change, and I see that, you know, and I pulse the room and I say, have you felt that? And every time they go, wow, I really felt it. And I had a talk recently. It was a couple in the audience, and he went behind her and did the
Yes.
yeah, he went, you know, like they were on the ship, and she was Kate and he was Leo, and you know, it was so cool. So doing that talk is really impactful for me. I just love doing it, and the music and the emotions, and having them step into their goals with with the endorphins, and making sure that, you know, they're doing that dopamine, not the dopamine hit of Facebook or Instagram or likes, and, you know, drinking or eating or, you know, whatever it is they do for dopamine, that seesaw I talked about at the beginning, but that they do long lasting dopamine for good. And that's the manifesting of their goals, and getting into their goals like they're actually happening, and playing like a movie, and making sure they understand, like, you know, manifesting is, anybody can do it, and it's so powerful. My wife tells me all the time, but can you just stop for a second? I can't keep up with you manifesting. You know, we've done so many crazy things, because I'm like, you know, I can see myself on the red dot, boom, you know, 10 months later, I'm doing my first TEDx where, you know, and it's just, I see myself on this stage, and boom, there I am. You know, and it's really important that people know that these kinds of things are so powerful, and we have it's all right here, but we have to open up our heart to the universe, because it's going to give us what we want. We just have to ask for it.
Ooh, okay. So Rob, I was house sitting earlier this year, and that was one of the things that I struggled with, is asking for it. But I was doing a lot of self awareness work and that kind of stuff. And the videos that I just happened to be listening to on YouTube kind of had this insight that developed in my brain, which was, I am so used to only getting what I need that anytime I thought of or tried to ask for something that I just wanted or desired, my mind went, no, you don't need it, therefore you can't have it.
I love that. No.
And I went, oh, that explains so much of my life, not just as a kid, but as an adult, taking that into adulthood.
Yeah.
And then if I couldn't justify that I needed it, I could never get the resources, the time, the money, with the whatever, to make it happen.
Yeah, right on. And for me, I don't use need or want. And I don't even want to talk about that. What I talk about is in my voice, what I asked the universe to give me what others need, to give me, that's, how do I serve? What can I do to do better? So it's not so much what I need, it's what the universe needs me to have. Right. It's a little different twist. Right. So I don't go, I want this, I want that. So when I did the TEDx manifesting, I'd say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to let the universe, guide me as to when and where I will do that and how I will serve. And I visualized it all, and boy, it came true just like I visualized. But it wasn't for me. And that's the difference between manifesting for yourself and manifesting for others. And the universe is going to give you it is going to give you what you need. And it may not be what you want. Correct. And that's why I try not to get into that circle, because I don't want to focus on what I want. I want to focus on what others need through me. And that's really been all my success, and everything that I look at, everything that I've done, it's because I want to give back. And when I went to London, it's funny because I got there and it was a crazy story. I was at a business meeting and I was with the executive, and I was walking by, and of course he knew me well. I've worked there for 8-9 years, and I said, hey, I love my job. I absolutely love my job. I'm just lighting it up here, and it's all good. But if you need my skill set anywhere else, or you need me to do something else, I want to live a growth mindset. I want to give back. Just call me. I'm happy to entertain anything you need my skill set for. 2 weeks I was in London. I didn't ask for London. I asked for the universe to give me a look at if there's anything that I can do. And here I am in London, and what a blast we had. Even with COVID, we had a blast for those 2 years. We became Londoners. We were local in the village, and look, we weren't suffering, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. Was it the job that I went out to do? No. Was it this amazing? I met hundreds of people. No. But but we were successful. We went from last to first in the first year.
Nice.
Year. Yeah. And we did that because of the principles that I used. Even over Zoom, I used physical intelligence, and I used a lot of other things. I used the words differently. I used what I focused on, and I did use that physiology on Zoom. And I was able to really, 11 hours on Zoom, I had to use everything I had. Every day. It was like Groundhog Day, It was brutal. But looking back, it was one wonderful experience, and I have so much love in my heart for the people that were under my charge, and I'm still friends. They've actually come over. A couple of them come over and visited me in Florida here, and it was a wonderful experience. And it's all how you define it. It's how we define our adversity. It's how we define our life experiences, and I absolutely believe in that. And we have the ability to define it any way we want. So. And I think it's important that we do that. I think it really is, and we have to build that resilience, because you cited a study, Laura, earlier. There was a Harvard medical study in 2013 that said if the lack of resilience can actually lead to chronic health issues like heart disease, heart disease, depression, anxiety. That's obvious, right? Depression, anxiety, but heart disease. And that's a study that was done by Harvard Medical. And so we need that resilience. So my mission is to make sure people build that resilience, and whether they do it through physical intelligence or whether they do it through my 3-step process to overcome adversity and build resilience, doesn't matter. As long as you're always building that resilience and stacking that adversity, doesn't matter if it doesn't have to be a life event like we talked about earlier here. It could be anything. But if you're mindful of the adversity and you stack that adversity and build that resilience, it's going to serve you well later, just like it served me when I had to go through what I went through.
Resilience has come up in almost every conversation this whole week. So I'm going to ask you what I'm asking everybody else, and I might have to compile this on an Excel spreadsheet. How would you define resilience through your lens and perspective?
Yeah, so very simply, I define resilience as the ability to bounce back after adversity, whatever it is, even stronger with new purpose and perspective. That's my definition.
Powerful.
It still reminds me of those little punching bags that we used to have as kids, like the little metal balls at the bottom. And
Exactly. Yeah, but I think it's important that when you go into that, I have like I said, I have a 3-step process where you accept, you appreciate, and you assess. And if you take those 3 steps, you actually accept your adversity. And I learned that, actually. It's funny. Again, none of this is rocket science. It's just I'm just bringing these things to bear through my experience. But I related it back to when I entered the rooms of AA. Right. The first year, it was brutal. I became suicidal. I was depressed because I didn't accept. I fought it. Once I accepted, then I had the mindset and I had the ability to really embrace the program, embrace my adversity, and stay sober one day at a time, even today.
Yeah.
So that was the accept part. And I lived it and breathed that. And now I can transform that into anything, business or life. And first thing you do is accept. Yeah. The second thing you do is appreciate it. And people think I'm crazy, but you thank your adversity. It's here to make you stronger and not break you. I tell the story where in my early 20s, I became legally blind. I had a rare eye disease. I've had 2 transplants, and I'm 20 now, and everything's fine. I'm grateful. But boy, I learned how to appreciate the gift of sight and the miracle of modern medicine, didn't I? So you appreciate, what you go through and how you go through it. You have to appreciate it. And once you do that, those 2 steps, for me, I believe that you're ready to assess, and that's where you pull back and you assess your options, and then you can move forward. After you do those first 2 steps, you've got a clear mind. You've got conviction on where you're headed, and you may do midline corrections. You may change again. You just keep trying until it works, but at least you're able to move forward with new purpose and perspective. And again, that's just something I learned. So those are the lessons I pass on, and those are the 3 steps. Real simple, AAA, done, and just keep doing it. Now, not easy, takes a lot of work. But from my experience, it works every time.
that same kind of thing we did in mindfulness class in the medical center over by my work, because I was suffering from chronic pain. And the first thing that I needed to do was accept that the pain was there.
Yeah.
Once I accepted that it was there, I could finally appreciate what had happened and appreciate the communication it was trying to give me. And then from there, I could finally start to have some curiosity about when it was happening, why it was happening, like all of the depth of communication that came with it. And what I realized was that my pain at that point was maybe 10% physical. 90% of it was emotional, because I was too busy going, no, 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 and trying to shove it away, that my whole body was using most of its energy just to deny its existence. And then as soon as I stopped, I had all that energy back.
Yeah.
I finally had better perspective so that I could assess the damage within and without and take my next best step.
Look at you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You just proved my principle. I love it. That's
exactly.
Awesome. That is awesome. You know, I have a soundbite I say every time. I try to say every time, and that is, my motto is to always give in but never give up. And I think that's what you just said, right? So always give. That's how I sign my book: give in but never give up.
Do you have your book beside you? Can we actually see the?
I do. How about
yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's it right there. And it really is. It's an amazing thing that it got published, and and that it's out there now, and people can get that on Amazon or anywhere they buy books. But and again, it's just if you get one little tidbit out of that, I'd be I've done my job, and I'm grateful for that.
I appreciate that. Rob, we have just a few minutes left, so I want to make sure that we know, of course, where to find you and your favorite way to communicate.
Well, mine's always face-to-face. Mine is the human connection. It's one of my main values. It probably is my main value, as you can tell. I mean, I almost want I'm dying not being able to. I can't give you a hug. I can't, there you go. Yeah, I know. Virtual hug. I'm definitely a hugger, and
me too.
About me, but that being said, in the virtual world, I obviously do global. I'm a global speaker, so I'm getting in touch with everybody from all worlds. My website is robswymer.com, SWYMER.com. That's the best way to get a hold of me. You can contact me there. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I never say no. I'm looking, I'm always growing my network, so you can get me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I don't do social media as much as I should. My team is getting after me. That's going to ramp up here next month. But for me, I'm face to face. I'm voice to voice. And but the best way to get to me is my website, and I always get back to people.
Awesome. I also love to hold space at the end of an interview, just in case there's something on your mind or in your heart that you just need to share with people. What might that be?
Well, for business, anybody in business listening to this, it's important to know that you need this kind of practice in your culture, because it is all about culture. We all know that. And while we need operational cadence and excellence to run our business, and we have shareholder value and stockholders to account for, the culture will always win. Engaged cultures are 22% more profitable per Gallup study that was done. So we know it works. So all I would say to the business leaders out there is, open your heart, be bold, be brave, and be memorable. That's what I would say.
Ooh, bold, brave, and memorable. I love that. Thank you so much, Rob. I do want to call this the official close of the interview itself, but I do invite you to stay for just a few more minutes.
Okay.
As I love going around just to kind of give a little bit of a recap and some of our favorite moments. So I'm going to start with you, Rob. What is something that stood out to you in our conversation today?
Oh, I love that we are like-minded, and that you were citing studies that I also cite on stage, and that, we're sort of talking the same talk. And I love that there wasn't a disconnect there, and you were open to my principles, because, we said it, right? They woo-woo sometimes, but the reality is that they're really not, and not anymore, because we need them. So I love that part, that you both were open and willing to hear the message that I have, as especially as a guy out here trying to make a difference. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Of course. What about you, Abby? What's something that stood out to you?
Oh, I have so many questions still. You're definitely a very interesting man, and I just loved your energy. I think the biggest thing that really stood out to me is getting to witness you living in your purpose and what that does to a person. You know, you are radiating, you are beaming, you're full of light and passion, and it's just really beautiful. Regardless of what you've overcome and gone through and all of that kind of stuff, because it could have been the opposite, right? We wouldn't be here and you'd be in a very different place, right? But being able to see what you did with your adversity and what you're doing is so inspiring. So thank you for sharing time with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a long list of notes too, and so many more questions. I do actually would love to connect with you after this, because I think I definitely want to watch your TED Talk to see if it's relevant to the TED Talk that I'm supposed to be applying for, like today.
Oh.
I haven't finished.
I'm happy to help. Happy to help you there. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a conversation. You brought up a few things I want to touch on. One of them was you said it takes 8 seconds to change your emotion. I'd love to know what that study was so I can read into it more.
Yeah, that's part of the Physical Intelligence Institute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And all of the people that have participated, hundreds of thousands of people that have gone through this, right? So it's all the data that's come back from the people that have actually practiced and put this into real life practice. And Claire Dale actually just got done with her doctorate on the subject, and she has a TEDx talk as well.
Oh, okay.
So you can listen to her TEDx, and she talks about the 8 seconds. That's the TED Talk. So
good.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then with the 8 seconds for me is I felt it as well. So it's practical knowledge, and then her doctorate was all about that. So you can get more information about that from just Googling the Physical Intelligence Institute.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I was already talking to I just lost her name, Susan David, about the emotional intelligence and how it all ties in.
Yeah.
We'll talk in more detail later, but I have this idea of the good day cookie.
Oh, cool.
Yes. And the 8 seconds ties right in. I was like, oh, this is so amazing.
Yeah, I'll help you. I'd love to help you with that. Sure. I mean,
that'd
be great. I think we have 3 intelligent, obviously the intellect and then the emotional. This is the third one, the physical. Yeah. And it's different because people aren't like you just said, the first thing you said when I said it was, oh, what's that? I said, no one really knows what this is. And they may be using it in different ways. Yeah. But then when you actually study it, then you can really apply it. And it's really cool.
Exactly. And the other thing that stood out to me was when you use the word barrier earlier with regards to having to go around things, over things, they're just things that are in your way on your journey. In my mind, it shifted the idea of a barrier to being a checkpoint.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I loved that little visual in my mind. So now it's not this wall that I'm trying to knock down. It's a checkpoint that I get to go through. It's a good thing now. Yeah. So thank you for that little image in my mind.
No worries at all. That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we all have those limited beliefs. And then when you start to really kind of peel back those limited beliefs and question them, they don't hold up. They never hold up. No. It's not true, and it's, the way an alcoholic mind will look out to the future and just think that, oh my God, it's gonna be horrible, and it hasn't even happened, right? And it's just crazy stuff. So those limited beliefs are, they're barriers that you just you jump over them, right? Some of them are higher jumps and some of them are lower, but they're all doable.
I want to say thank you so much, Rob, for this whole time. Yeah, Abby and I still have so many questions. Yeah.
I'm here. What do you want? What do you need?
We'll need a part 2. Thank you so much. And I'm definitely going to be looking up your book and your talk. And really exciting.
Awesome. Thank you so
Rob.
much. I'm so grateful. Thank you very much. Have a great rest and happy Valentine's.
Yes.
Oh, you too. Bye, Rob.
Bye.
So we do have our next guest behind the scenes. Hi, Randy. Just give me a thumbs up if you're ready to join us. I love how easily people are just like, yeah, I'm ready right now.
Oh yeah, ready to roll.
How are you, Randy?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you. I'm in the frigid Midwest.
Mm.
It's brutal out. Yeah, it's really rough. It's dangerous actually. But I'm in the warmth of my RV where I spend most of my existence. So I'm happy and warm and comfortable, and I'm here with you guys. So it's all good.
I appreciate that. So, Randy, I think you know my pattern by now of wanting to shake up the conversation at the beginning. Sure. Yeah. So I'm just going to dive right in. If you could have other people describe you in just 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be?
Oh, 3 words.
I know.
Oh. I think I just came up with run the race.
Run the race.
I have, if I'm passionate about something like I am with music, and like I am with helping others, and like I am with knowing that no matter how difficult things are, that they're going to work out. I'll run the race forever.
Oh.
And that's the only reason I'm here, is because I elected to continue to run the race, not run away from, but run the race, the rebound forward race to better days.
That's so sweet. So, Randy, of course, the follow-up question is, how does the run the race part tie into your core message? But I think you kind of already started that explanation for us. So can you tell us why you have this core message of wanting people to, I'll use your words, run the race and have that resilience?
I think that deep down, Laura, that there is a real keen sense that my daughters, I have a 33-year-old daughter who got married in 24. I have a 28-year-old daughter, and we lost 2 children, 2 daughters at the age of 4. And I know that they are watching their dad, all 4 of them, and this is way more than trying to win a basketball game. And this has come through a lot of years of introspection and really trying to work on myself and re-identifying the whole thing. But I really believe that they want their dad to represent the pain and the anguish and the really difficult things in our lives as something that can be really, really strong and incredible and beneficial for other people. And it's using pain for gain is what it is. We can go hide under a rock and have a pity party for the rest of our life. I call it, when the tough stuff hits, you got 3 choices. You can quit, sit, or get. And we all know what quit is. And sit is the pity party. But get is decide what you want to get out of it. I believe adversity comes with a trampoline. So if that's the case, we got some great times ahead of us. You just have to see it that way. And I have. And so you took me to a place that is really deeply embedded inside me about my girls. And I really, I know that it is a part of a bridge that's been being built from my experience with losing children to helping other people in a lot of ways, not just from losing children, but in a lot of ways, because life's tough. But we got to run the race. We got to run the race. There's great times ahead. I'm convinced. I think adversity is a great thing.
Of course. Now, Randy, if you don't mind, I do need a minute. Abby, I was like, I'm pretty sure you got this. She's wonderful. So I'll be back in about a minute or 2, but I'm still listening. I'll turn it right up.
So, Rob, great to meet you. So welcome to the show.
Abby.
Yes, I'd love to kind of hear, because the topic that has been kind of coming up a lot in the interviews this morning, and even just this week, has been resilience. And so I guess I'll just ask you plain and simple, like what is your definition of resilience? What does that mean to you when you think of that word in your life?
Resilience is the weapon that you use against things that you are uncomfortable with, that you shy away from, that hurt, that you don't want to deal with. And I love the analogy of resilience being a muscle, and that, in time, like when I'm talking to young people, you talk about adversity with young people, and they haven't experienced a lot yet. And so they have nothing to bounce it against. They really don't. Now, you talk to people who have been through some things, then they can grasp it a little bit more. And so if we truly will exercise that muscle properly and get through whatever hurdle, obstacle, the other day I wrote down 61 items that were all like the same, how we talk about hurt, pain, obstacle, difficulty, uncomfortable. I have 61 terms, so that covers all of us, what we go through every day. When you hit those, you can't stop. But what you have to do is say, when I was here last time, how did I think? How did I feel? What did I do? What action steps did I take? And what was the result? Because what we've done properly once, all we really have to do is exercise and flex that resilience muscle again, because it keeps getting stronger and wiser and deeper, to where it's almost like, hey, bring it on, and so I think it is, and of course you can use it as a sports analogy too, which fits me. But yeah, I think we all have it. I think we have varying degrees of it. Some people don't think they have resilience. I think we all have it. We just haven't exercised it. We haven't used it. We haven't strengthened it. But I'll tell you, what a great thing to go into a difficult phone call, a difficult situation, and say, oh yeah, dummy. Okay. Tap myself on the shoulder. Okay. Remember that one time you remember that? You got through that one. How did you do that? And revisit that. And then I think we could, I really do believe we can get through anything. I don't think there's a reason to white flag anything in life.
Awesome. Amazing. I just asked him what his definition of resilience is. So we were just chatting about that. Yeah. Now I'm going to step away for just a second. I'll be right back. But I'm also listening.
I know, it's like this makes for a long day, but it's so interesting that we don't want to go.
Yeah.
So Randy, I want to shift gears just a little bit, because I do love the conversation about resilience, and there's so many things that we're trying to work through or reach our next checkpoint or grow within ourselves. What do you think it is that stops people from getting to that point of making the decision of taking action on that change?
Well, pain can make cowards of us all, for sure.
Yeah.
They say athletically, fatigue makes cowards of us all, and that's pretty true. It's a pretty telling comment. But anything, uncomfortableness. I mean, there's a reason why we have things called convenience stores and drive up for fast food. Are you kidding me? I mean, our world's just turned into, let's not put forth any effort. Oh no, I can do something that will require much less effort. And we're talking about getting a cup of coffee, for crying out loud, right?
I never thought of it that way.
Oh, it's unbelievable. There's 13 cars at Starbucks. I'm like, people, I've gone by them before and say, hey, they do serve coffee inside, and it's just as good as what you're going to get in 7 minutes. It drives me nuts. So, but we're not talking to young people. So if you and I are having a conversation, our combined experience of things that were difficult, uncomfortable, painful, we wanted to run from, would be massive. It'd be a huge list.
Yeah.
How did we get through all those things? Well, we did, because at some point we realized, and I'm being a little repetitive, but we
That's okay.
realized I've been here before. Oh, remember when? Oh, yeah. And in fact, I like to tell people, I want you to think of the most difficult thing you've ever had to take on. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and people do. They take a deep breath, and I'll say,
Yeah.
okay, well,
I
when
got
you
full
lost,
body chills right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
like just for instance, I'll say, when you lost your spouse to cancer, was there a day where you said, there is no way you can do this? And they said, yeah, I said it every day for
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah.
But you did. All you're talking about now is, let's say, some kind of financial hiccup or a relationship situation going on. And so, I mean, preparation and looking back into the past and analyzing the experiences we've had in the past and how we've dealt with them, we have to know that we can get through things. But we're human, and we don't like it when it's cold out. Okay, we don't like it when we have to run 10 feet to get some. It's just unbelievable. So, I mean, it seems silly, but when I go to Walmart, I pick up carts for all the people who have broken legs, who can't walk 17 steps to the cart corral, for crying out loud. I mean, we're living in that world. And so when something big happens, you kind of understand why people they become just untethered. They just disappear to nothing. They can't deal with it. But we all have way more ability to handle daily things or lifelong things, the really tough stuff, the big hurt, I call it. The big hurts of life. We do. We really do. And we need to give ourselves credit. We do have to have some grace and be kind to ourselves and give ourselves time to grieve, or whatever, is on the plate. We have to do that, but we have to move forward. We have got to rebound forward right on through it.
I may have to give myself homework from this conversation of just writing down a list of some of the many things that I've overcome.
Yes.
Even like just the goal of, let's write one page.
Yeah.
Because
right.
It's eye-opening. It doesn't even have to be the major things. It could be
Right.
like, my husband, well, I'm going to use my husband as an example. He might write on his page, I forgot my gym shorts the other day.
Right.
It's like, it could be as simple as not going for the workout because you did something silly and you didn't make it ruin your day. But how many times did we make something small like that ruin our day?
Yes. You know that phone call that we don't want to make? You know that one? I've made that it's become almost comical for me. Because I'll have a list that I'll refer to and say, okay, I'm going to compare this stupid phone call to this guy. And I rather than come up with how it's going to go south, I'm just going to say, I'm going to compare it to something that was really, really life altering. And next thing you know, I'm laughing, dialing the number. Like, I can't wait to make this call.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so true. That's daily stuff. But I mean, we got to be stronger than that.
Yeah.
But
we actually talked about it yesterday, where somebody was on the customer service end, and we were saying how when you call somebody and you're mad, it's not the person on the other end of the line that's doing the thing to you. So just having that moment to remember, okay.
Yeah, I've got another example too that I've been thinking about lately, because I binge watched the only season 1 of Landman. Have you seen Landman?
No.
Okay, it's
What is
Billy
that?
Bob Thornton.
Okay.
Out in the drilling in the oil business in Texas.
Oh, okay.
And this guy takes on more in a day than most people in a lifetime. And you ought to see the calmness with which he answers the phone, how he responds, and how worn out he looks at the end of the day. It's unbelievable. And then he turns around, sleeps, gets up and has his coffee and does it all over again the next day. He already knows, which leads me to something I want to make sure I mention, but he already knows there's going to be difficulty in every one of his days.
Yeah.
He knows. And it's a matter of somebody taking a shot at him or chasing him down the road in his pickup truck or calling, and the way he handles it is miraculous. There's really a gift in that. It's a very entertaining a show, by the way, but there is a gift in there for those of us who do deal with resilience and do teach people how to get through the tough stuff in life through how Billy Bob's character takes care of every day. It's amazing.
I'm just thinking of all the storylines he's been through over the years in wrestling and how that's like pre-prepared him for all of the chaos now.
Wow. I know.
Love that.
Oh man, Randy.
You'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, definitely. So Randy, I do want to shift a little bit more into the Valentine's conversation of love. So what is it that you love about this work that you do?
Primarily because what has been very painful can become really amazing. And I think that transformation right there is really cool. So that's probably the first thing. And the second thing is I consider myself a bridge builder. I can take someone who's willing and is able to and willing to be uncomfortable and go through something tough. But if I can help paint a picture to them to get to the other side, that is really fulfilling to me. I love that. I just love that. And sometimes we need that other person in our life to help us do that. We can't do it on our own. Part of my background is when I thought life got too tough to handle, I just ran. I didn't grieve. I didn't do the proper thing. I ran. And, the thing about running is the person who chases never tires. So go off and run from your problems. Go off and run from a situation. The one that chases never tires, ever. But we do, and eventually we get. And it happened to me. I go from being on television, national television as a college basketball coach twice a week to walking into a federal prison, and wow. I'm like, how did that happen? So, it's just, I love your question and thanks for asking that. I would say just those two things really, just to really turn the mess into a message which helps people and then really kind of build that bridge. And when they can see it, what's cool is when they can see the picture that you portray to them about what it can be. Hey, listen, this can be you in the near future, in the very near future. And it's like they don't believe it. They're like, okay, all right, I'll believe you, but I don't believe you. But when they start to realize that it can happen, and then when it does happen, man, what an amazing feeling. And we need people who can do that with us and for us, because we can't go around the tough stuff. You jump over it. You can't go around it. You got to go through the fire. You got to go right through it. And those two things are pretty cool. Yeah. Love them.
Amazing. So Randy, who has been, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You're only here for so long.
Who has been that person for you, or those people for you that have allowed you to experience that in your own life, where you were able to see things from a different perspective than maybe you were looking at it?
It's a consortium of people. It's a mother who drops seeds all the time that I didn't know at the time she was dropping seeds, but she was dropping unbelievable lifelong seeds. It was the 3 F's. I basically am upright because of the 3 F's: my family, my faith, and my friends. And I have some deep relationships from guys I went to elementary school and junior high with to this day, about 7 of them from my hometown. And it's not a very big town. And they're really special relationships. And so it's a consortium of these people. It's the senior pastor who explained to me in no uncertain terms that if I made a decision not to no longer be on this earth because I thought it hurt too much and I didn't want to go through it, that I had to understand that we, and I mean, this was a very pivotal moment in my career. Pastor David Staff, a very close friend and our senior pastor at our church in Ames, Iowa, and said, do you understand that as humans, we are not designed to know all the answers? And you know the answer I was asking. It was why. And
but I want to know everything.
Yeah, I know. And he said, you're not designed to, but the second part of that took about a 500-pound weight safe off my back. But the second part of it just incredibly changed my perspective and my outlook on everything. He said, you're going to know why. There will become a time, not on this side of things, but there is going to be a time where you will know the why, and it's going to make sense. And I remember almost arguing with him like, I'll tell you what, our Creator is going to have to be pretty amazing, because how he can turn this into the death of your children into something that, and it says in Romans 8:28, it's for the good. Things are done for the good of those who know Christ. And that's the idea. And when David Staff shared that with me, it completely changed everything for me. Yeah.
Powerful.
So a lot of people, to answer your question.
Yeah.
A lot of people. Thank goodness. I'm very blessed that way.
I had one of my spiritual coaches tell me one time, because I was having a really hard time with one of the last times of my PTSD. I was diagnosed multiple times. But she had told me that sometimes these people that we do not like or have other stronger words for, sometimes they're here because they are the strong ones that can play that role in our lives and know that in the end, they're actually helping. Because they're helping us to learn a lesson, or they're helping us to have a redirection for something that is better for our future.
Yes.
But if you believe in reincarnation, or if you believe in any of that, I'm here and I've chosen this life kind of thing, that usually these people are somebody who loves you so much that they're willing to be that person to do something that hurts you temporarily so that you become that better version. And I'm like,
that's really a good comment,
wow.
Laura. And I'm going to give you an athletic example really quick.
Sure.
One of the real neat things to me about being a coach is later on to hear from those that you coached when they were young, when they were 18 or 19 or 20 or 21 years old, to come back with families and with careers and having worked through a lot of adverse things in their life, and to come back and say, Coach, I just have to tell you, I never could understand why you guys made it so difficult and pushed us so hard and challenged us to the levels you challenged us, but now I know, I get it. And I do the same with my family, and I do the same with my friends. And I push, people at work, and I'm challenging people all the time. And for them to say that, and that's because in the moment, they just wanted to curse me and run off that floor and never see the coach again. But it's so cool for them to then live life and collect all these lessons and then come back and verbalize that. We just had an incredible weekend about a month ago at Iowa State University. We had 2 back-to-back Big 12 championship teams, and after 25 years, those 2 teams came back. And to see those guys and their families and what they've lived through, I heard some stories, and then they reflected back on how difficult they didn't think they could get through another practice. And then they go, it was just a practice, and I made such a big deal of it. And so they're now being the ones to carry on the torch, and they're helping others through things that other people don't think, or their kids don't think that they can get through. And that becomes generational. That becomes forever, I guess. That's really, really awesome.
The ripple effects. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It reminds me of being a new mom and the lack of sleep that happens at the beginning of that whole thing. I thought that I couldn't make it through my day, but the amount that you can push yourself, even when you already feel like you're at your brink, you're like a superhero at that point. You're like, how am I surviving on 3 hours of broken sleep a night for 4 months straight? You're like, I am Superwoman right now.
But you can take that and put that in your own personal bank of experiences. And then that's that resilience muscle that if you continue to flex it, you can look back on those things and say, how did I do that? And, that phone call, and then start laughing at yourself about the phone call that you can't make, right?
Oh, I'm going to laugh even more because this weekend, my daughter has one of those robot babies. So I get to pretend to be grandma and get her to have a very tiny glimpse of what it was like when I was her mom.
Yeah, right.
But I don't have to feed it. She does.
Yes. Very cool. They might as well start. Yeah, might as well start experiencing those things. Yeah. They're coming.
So, Randy, I want to shift a little bit into the ways that you have decided to share your message. Are you part of one of the Blue Talks books? Did I see your face on one of those?
Yes.
Which one are you in?
2, I think.
Oh, I don't have that one next to me.
I think it's 2.
I don't know. There's lots of fun faces on these. So
yes, there are.
Never know. My mom's calling me. Tell her no right now. Yeah. No, I don't have that one with me. I'm sorry. But for those looking, the tops always look the same. You're in one of those.
Yes.
Cool. Do you know what you wrote? Do you know what your chapter's called or what you wrote about?
I've done a couple of those. I believe I know I wrote one on being a seed planter. I told a story about a farmer who walked around every day with a hole in his pocket, and he started every day by filling his pocket full of seed, but he had a small hole in the bottom of his pocket. Yes. And by design, at the end of the day, his wife would ask him how his day went, and he would pat his pocket, and there would be nothing there. And he said, I think I did pretty well today. So I wrote one about the seed planter, I know.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Okay, but now I'm also picturing crop circles, but in a seeded way. So it's there'll be trails of his path over the last few years.
Well, the idea with the seed is, and I think it's really neat. I have a concept. In fact, Corey and I we've shared a discussion about invisible impact. That concept of what invisible impact is.
Yep.
And I think that every time we've heard a message, or met someone, or seen something amazing, or maybe something hurtful happen, or something said. We may not later on in our life remember who said it or in what context, but we remember, oh yeah, I remember somebody said this was going to happen to me, and this is how I should respond. And I think we all drop seeds every day. I think we have to really be careful what we say and in what context we say things, because you never know who heard what and when they're going to store that away in their memory bank and use it. And I think that's really powerful.
Okay, to playfully relate that to what I just told you about my daughter having that baby this weekend, let's see how many seeds have been planted in her.
Oh, I want to hear after this weekend. I want to hear how this went. This will be good.
Oh, part of me is like, should I just sit there and not say anything and just take notes of all the no, because we were laughing. I think it was yesterday. I was telling a story about how I overheard her one day telling all her friends exactly what I have been telling her for years, but
Sure.
she never expressed to me that she had an understanding.
Yes.
And yet all of a sudden overhearing, I was like, she did listen.
See? The invisible impact.
The invisible impact.
There
So
it
I'm
is.
like, oh, I wonder how many things she's going to do that she has been
Right.
listening, but just I
Right.
didn't notice she wasn't listening.
And then you know the back end of that is when she does make a comment, you'll say, I have told you that for years. And she'll say, you never told me that. And so all of a
Yes.
sudden they want to kind of pretend
Yes.
like they invented that, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that one. They've been heard of for years. Now
Wait.
they're
I have
taking
video
taking
proof.
that claim. Yeah.
Oh,
I love the topic about invisible impact and what you shared about how, we like, not that we have to be careful, but we never know what we might say, to somebody that could deeply impact them, both negatively and positively. And I know for myself, I can think of numerous occasions when somebody has said something to me, maybe in passing, and that it really, really resonated and really stuck with me. And some of those things were seeds that were planted and they bloomed and blossomed into something massive for myself. And so when we think about impact, and then in the work that you do, would you say that impact is a core value for you? Like you're here to create impact for others. Like what does that mean to you for when you think about the ripple effects that you want to leave here with your journey?
It's a big part of it. And I always have to be mindful that it's not my job to tell someone how to look at something.
Mm-hmm.
It's my job though to portray. I love portraying it through story or metaphors, or just like my example with my players who now come back. Okay, there would be another way to tell that story, but I love stories, and I just love to. I'm a huge music fan, and so I'm always putting things in musical terms also too, which music is just the incredible universal language. And so I try really hard. What I don't want to be is I don't want to be a guy who sounds like the expert, and every time he drops a nugget on somebody, it's like their quote, or I said this, or I do this, or this was in my book, or I'm not about that. But I do like to talk about different ways for them to see things. And it's kind of like, one of the things that we've talked about so far is, kind of that phone call, just, versus, oh, come on now. Yeah, come on, you're tougher than that. Pick the phone up, make the phone call. I can do that, but that's not the right approach. There's a softer, to me, much more valuable, meaningful way to do it. And I love to use, stories and analogies.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, analogies are my favorite. I'm a very visual person. My mind is like always playing this movie. And so if somebody starts describing something and I don't have context first, it's like the actors are going, we don't know what to do. We don't have any direction yet. It's like I can't pull out of my tickle trunk, the right puppet or the right prop or something.
This might fit. I want to throw this in. So I know that when we sense that there's something on someone's heart, could be a struggle, it could be just some unresolved pain, it could be a lot of different things. Yeah. If you sense that with another person, I call it share first. And I've started to do this. It happened organically one day. In fact, my pastor at church said, "Hey, do you know so-and-so?" I go, "I don't know him, but I know who he is." He said, "Would you call him and ask him to just meet you for coffee?" He said, "I think there are some things going on in his life that he could probably benefit from visiting with you about, and you'll have a really good way to approach it." And you know what? We sat down and made some pleasantries. And when I shared first, the dam burst. And it was an incredible lead in to some observations and some honesty. And of course, it had the one line that you hear all the time when people start to be authentic and honest is, "I've never, ever told anyone this." I've heard that so many times because when I share first, I'm then, okay, I'm being honest, I'm being real, I'm being a human. It gives them license to then put their guard down and say, "Boy, maybe this is why we're sitting here having coffee, but I got some stuff going on in my life. Could I tell you?" And then, like I say, the floodgates. That's a pretty cool posture. And I wanted to throw it out because anybody can use that. And it's like if you come up to, okay, so let me give you the counter to that is I go up to that guy and don't ask him to coffee, but I catch him after church and say, "Hey, you really look rough around the edges. You have some things going on in your life that you haven't told anybody about. Can you imagine me doing that out in the foyer of church, right?" Or at Walmart or whatever. Yes. You're going to get nowhere with it, right?
I usually know I get quite the opposite effect from people that I did say that to. Because I could tell which people would just answer me and which people wouldn't. The ones that I was like, I know this person will just answer, I just asked.
Yeah.
And I'd never met them before, but I could just tell. Right. And then
yes. Be ready for that part, because that part's coming. But isn't that cool? Because I'll guarantee you, when they woke up that day, there's no way they thought this would be the day where they were going to expose things in their life that they're not proud of to almost a total stranger. And that's magic. That's why that's one of the reasons we're here on earth.
Yeah.
I really believe that. It's to help our fellow man.
We have like 2.5-ish minutes left. I want to make sure that we know where to find you and, of course, your favorite way to communicate.
My favorite way to communicate is to receive an email, and I love to respond. I love to strike up conversations. I love to share things that I have. But it's my initials, RB. Okay. I have a real tricky email address, rb@coachrb.com. My initials.
You got me with that one. You did.
So my domain is Coach RB. So it's just Coach. It's just rb@coachrb.com. So anybody could go to the website, Coach RB, but that's the email. And I'd love to hear from people. Strike up conversations. Next thing you know, we're exchanging not recipes, but music. Things about sports, things about whatever case may be. So that's when I'm in my wheelhouse, and that's when I know that I have an opportunity to not change someone, to not completely redo someone's thinking, just to have a conversation and maybe drop a couple seeds that maybe will be accepted and come to fruition in that moment, but maybe it's not for a season or two down the road.
Yeah.
They won't even remember me, but they'll remember somebody told them that, hey, oh yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do. That was a cool idea. I'm going to do that. That's pretty neat.
That is pretty neat. So we have about a minute left, and I love to end each interview by just asking if there's anything on your head or in your heart that you just need to leave people with. What would you love to share?
Well, the last 2 nights I've seen one of the great singer-songwriters in American music, Kevin Kinney, with the band Driving and Crying. And Kevin Kinney wrote a song called Scarred But Smarter. And the lyrics to Scarred But Smarter could absolutely lead someone's life. And it's about the fact that there is going to be difficulty, there's going to be adversity. You knew that when you went out there, and how you handle it is all that we really need to be concerned with. And Scarred But Smarter is an incredible. So I got a chance, and I've got to know him, and he's a wonderful person, but I got a chance. He sang it last night. He sang it 2 nights ago. And the song Scarred But Smarter, just go on Spotify and pull up Scarred But Smarter, Kevin Kenny, and listen and pull up get a transcription of the words and read through it. It's phenomenal. I'm telling you, it is their song lyrics for life. That one song, it's the most profound lyrical. I just love it. And then of course I got to know him, and that just adds to it. So
Yeah,
he's a great guy.
So Randy, I will call this the official close to your interview. Thank you so much. But I do invite you to stay for a few more minutes.
Sure.
Abby can come and go whenever she needs. I know she has a meeting here soon. But I do like to do a little bit of a round table here of some takeaways. So Abby, did you want me to start with you so that you can leave?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Randy, this was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us your story and what you do. My big takeaway is when you said that when you encounter people that open up to you pretty quickly and they start to share with you, and that to me indicates that you're a very safe person. So you're because people share vulnerably when they feel safe, when they have the space to be able to feel safe and secure, and that they won't be judged, right? And so I think that you definitely have that quality of just this warmth and creating safety in a very short time, right? So I think that's a gift. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing your gifts with us today.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you. This was amazing. Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So, Randy, I'm going to ask you next. What is something that stood out to you in our conversation today?
I'm always reminded, if I'm asked the right questions in the right setting, and anytime I talk to you're amazing with your questions and your preparation. But what? No,
I don't prepare, right?
What always? Yeah, but it doesn't matter if you prepare, because there's preparing in the moment, which is what you do.
Yes.
That's what you. It's the same as somebody else sitting in a library for 5 hours getting ready to prepare for an interview. It's all the same. In fact, it may be better the way you do it. But
depends on the person. But yeah,
when I get an opportunity to be asked those types of things, where I really have to think about, why in the heck am I doing this? What is this about, really? And then it takes me to a place where it's so easy to answer, and it makes so much sense, and it's just I get reinvigorated that this is who I am and this is what I do, because then thank you for asking me that question, because you made me just think again about how cool it is to have an effect on other people. So that's what I picked up. I always do.
I love that. Okay, I do want to clarify. It's not that I don't prepare at all, because what we're doing now is I am getting some short bios, but like I've met you before. I've had conversations with you before. I'm familiar enough with your energy and the types of questions I can ask you that I don't need to go and read your bio.
Right.
But at the same time, I do not prepare questions. I prepare my energy. I prepare my body, sometimes with pain meds, and I prepare energetically to have a deep conversation with the person in front of me the best I can in that moment. And some days are much better than others, but that's my version of preparing, because one of my values, you discussed at the very beginning, that sometimes your values aren't the norm. Sometimes they're away. Family is not one of my values. Love is one of my values, which just happens to encompass my family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I like to lead a lot with curiosity, as it is one of my core values: exploration, curiosity, that kind of stuff. And so feel like I can get more of Randy out if I stay in that energy of the love, the curiosity, the exploration.
Do you know that just by your first question, you took me to a place where instantly I had in 3 words, and I had a couple of them immediately come to mind, and then all of a sudden this one just said, no, it's got to be run the race. That right there, what a great way to go into an interview. Oh man.
Okay, that question has been meticulously crafted to bring out so many things. Our next guest isn't here, so I can chat for a few minutes longer, but I do want to be mindful of your time too. It is 1:15. So if you have somewhere to be, just let me know. But other than that, we can chat. So that question is meant to bring out the values that you hold. It's meant to bring out how you want to show up in the world, how you see other people, how you value interactions with relationships. Like there's so many layers and levels to this, both within you and outside of you, that just by that question, I can tell so much about who you are that I don't even have to do the interview. But of course, the interview is so much fun and gives so much more detail and flavor and spice and color to everything that you do.
Right. Really
the
cool.
fun part for me is that we get to see how those words, or that phrase, in your case, the run the race, really is embedded into all of the things that you share.
Right.
Oh, so good.
Yes. Yeah, because I even talked about when I was the one doing the running, but running the wrong way. I mean, running for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
I mean, that even fits into the whole run the race concept, right? And just and oh my gosh.
And the extra fun for me is when I interview you more than once, these words are always shifting.
Right.
But I want to know the patterns. I want to see people's not elevation. That's not the word I'm looking for. Evolution. I want to see how maybe the mess to message style solopreneurs, do they have certain value shifts or shifts in subtlety of their values that can help us really understand what's the mindset difference between a mess to message solopreneur and maybe just a tech solopreneur?
Right.
Like, I want to know all of the answers, Randy.
Well, you're good at getting them out. It's a matter of time.
Yeah. By this point, I think I've asked the question to over 200 people. And so I have a nice data set.
Oh, I guess.
Yeah. And my plan is to get more and of course do a TEDx on the results of some of this.
Oh, so, that's great. That would be a great concept. I didn't know if you could see this. I was going to show this. This is a piece of artwork.
Oh, lovely.
That Kevin Kenny did, Scarred But Smarter, and then all the lyrics are up here. So what I'm going to do is I will how do I send you can you put your email in the chat for me?
I can send you a message afterwards.
Or send me a message.
Yeah.
I want to send that a picture of that to you.
Send Randy
profound lyrics. Oh my gosh.
DM for picture. Cool. Our next guest is here. I do want to say thank you again, Randy, for being so lovely. And we will talk soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Dr. Jenny. Just give me a thumbs up if you are ready to join me on stage. It's just you and I. We get to hang out, just the two of us.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So send Randy DM for picture before I forget to finish my sentence. Cool. So Randy and I were just chatting. I'm not sure how much you heard of my secret question that I start every interview off with.
Okay.
But I just want to shake things up. I don't want your pre-programmed responses. I want to get to know you, which to me is so much fun. So here's my question. If you could have other people describe you in just 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be?
Faithful, energetic.
Faithful, energetic.
Learner.
Oh, okay. Learner. Cool. Dr. Jenny.
Maybe I would change it to leader.
The learner to leader?
Yeah.
Cool. So, of course, the follow-up question is, how do the words faithful, energetic, and learner/leader, more on the leader side, how do they play a role in the core message that you have for people?
They're exactly in the core message I have for people, because my story and what has transpired really came from a spiritual awakening and a faithful walk towards what I'm most designed to do in displaying and engaging people in courageous lead learner mindset and integrity and alignment as they recalibrate towards the goals that they're setting. Specifically, I work with school leaders. I work with parents. Today, I'm at a school in Houston, Texas. They gave me a nice little space here, working with paraprofessionals on just how they can level up their next game. And so I do this by infusing neuroscience, how the brain learns, and really practical, relevant strategies that they can use and have workplace transfer.
Okay, you had me at neuroscience. We are going to have a very fun conversation.
Yes.
I love neuroscience.
Yes.
What inspired you to get into this work? Why not just, I don't know, do anything else? Why this work?
So I had the privilege of being the first person in my family to go to college, get a master's degree. I have a doctorate in educational psychology from Loyola University in Chicago. And I worked specifically with a gentleman named Dr. Eric Jensen, who has written over 32 books on the brain. He's on the Society of Neuroscience. And he was building a bridge towards, if you're working with brains every day, like a surgeon learns about that place that they're doing that surgery on, that, tendon or elbow, why don't we learn more about how the brain learns and functions? And, we want kids to remember things and capture and hold their working memory and their attention. And so, back that many, many years ago, nobody was talking about the hippocampus, the amygdala, the dopamine, the serotonin, the prefrontal cortex, the CEO of my brain. And so my whole thing is, gosh, what's going on in there? We actually have the technology to look and see. So let's talk about those findings and make applications to the work that we do each day, first and foremost for ourselves, so that we can show up as the leader and person that we want to be, as our best selves, and then transmit and translate that to the rippling all around us that happens every single day naturally. So instead of, everything speaks, so let's everything be on purpose as often as we can with brains and learning. And so.
That's so good. So then what I'm hearing is you work with more of the adults within the schools and that industry versus the kids. So
It's funny because it's both. It's so
what is both? Okay.
Literally in the last 10 days, I have had an entire elementary school. So 5th graders, the entire grade level, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd. I'm doing the paraprofessionals today. I did an administrative retreat. Swymer ISD is the 3rd largest school district in the country. So when at one school, they have 1,000 kids. It's gigantic. There's towns that don't have that many students in their community, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit of a different animal. It's kind of like a New York City and LA, Chicago, where there's just a lot of kids. But it's one giant district, and it's actually the 3rd largest. There's even bigger districts than Swymer. But so this has been about transforming lives and transforming education for 30 years for me. And so that life might be anybody's who's associated with that school. I did 2 parent nights, one last night, one on Monday. And the messages are different for those different audiences. They're looking for different things.
Yeah.
But there are some commonalities that I'm sharing with everybody.
We talked about leadership a lot this week, but even just the idea of helping people become courageous leaders is so very important. And another theme that has been popping up all week is treating human beings like human beings. And these courageous leaders are doing just that.
Yeah.
They're leading from the heart. So I'm gonna tie that into my question, because today's Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
What is it that you love about this work?
I just love I love this in the audience where like the nod, the aha moment, the excitement, the energy. Like when you walk through life, it's like, I'm still here. I'm awake. I'm alive. Like some of us have forgotten that, and we need each other to remind ourselves that we're here and that everything speaks and everything is on purpose. So let's be on purpose. You matter. You make a difference. And having the courage to suit up and show up every day, it really requires self-awareness. It requires self-regulation, and it requires, acceptance that other people are not me. I have a special gift to bring to the world, and I want to light a fire so that other people can take that with them as well. In my session just now, it was like we started it was like church. The ladies were like, "Oh yes, let's go!" Like you're just, it was like I was preaching a sermon. Sometimes I get going, especially in these full day workshops. But the shorter sessions, 45 minutes, an hour session, it's a much more laser focused thing. But it is kind of fun to just be with people and realize that we're all doing the best that we can with the information that we have. And there's this common humanity that has shifted in the world, even before the pandemic. I used to be an expert in my field. Nobody knew about the things that I was talking about. Now everybody can pick up their phone and get any information they want about any topic. So my job now is to share nuggets of information, facilitate, have people share, and it's a much more fun dynamic in terms of that. So I love it. I just love teaching. I love teaching, speaking, keynote presenting. To me, it's all about that just sizzle and substance that we can bring to each other, and I get going, and then some of my audience gets going, and it's just like this transformation of energy. It's just, there's radiance. It's just fun. It's fun.
I remember in college, we had to learn, because I took engineering and then architecture, and there was these like 2 huge binders of codes. And the teacher was like, do not try to memorize the codes. She's like, just refer to them often as we're using them. And she's like, the more you use that thing, the more you'll remember. But it made me think about how we're taught to learn. It's a lot of memorization. It's a lot of just do the thing. But what you're saying here is information now is at your fingertips. The hard part is implementing that information, understanding between the lines, and personalizing it. Like it's so much more of that facilitation and the guidance.
This is exactly it. We do not have an information problem.
No.
We have an implementation problem. Everyone knows what to do about XYZ problem. I mean, you could go on Khan Academy and do your whole math for the, 3 years of math if you want. We're in different settings.
Khan Academy?
Yes, Khan Academy.
Academy. I do love math. I used to do it for fun. My boss used to come in and be like, here's a question my daughter's working on. And I'd be like, here you go. Okay. Continue.
Yeah, we don't have an implementation. We have we don't have an information problem. We have an implementation problem.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think this is the explosion of coaching, and just people want people walking side by side with them.
Yeah.
And, I think that, yes, we have to have titles and leaders and hierarchy, but the work that I love doing is, I am a few steps ahead of you. I've had this experience. Here's some ideas. But I prefer to be at times in the middle of the herd. There's a time and a place for all all of those different things. So, yeah.
But then you also have your own values, which will kind of determine which places you want to be at the head of the herd and which places you want to be at the very back of the herd.
Exactly. And it's all contextual, right? It's like, what is my role here? So I was a classroom teacher. I became a school principal when I was 26 years old
Oh, wow.
in Chicago. I did a big turnaround to that school where kids' achievement went through the roof. That landed me speaking at some conferences, which then had this takeoff. I'm in 137 cities, 22 countries. And this is before kids, before husband. But I was exhausted by after the first year, the second year, the third year, the fourth year. So I started paring it down to 100 days, 75 days, 50 days. I've written 4 books in the last 4 years. I've been able to really honor my family commitment and just try to be a little bit more balanced. And this was also on the heels of going through a breast cancer diagnosis. And that's a wake up call for you. That'll wake your brain up. So where am I? I'm just all over the place.
No, like there's so much information here that I love. Do you mind me asking? Go as deep as you want.
Sure.
But I'm really curious because you reacted with the whole cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
How did that diagnosis and the experience with whatever you went through, again, whatever depth you'd like, how did that affect the shifts that you've made since then in this work? Because I know it has played a role, but like, tell us about new version of Jenny.
Yes. So the old Jenny doesn't do 150 plus days of travel a year, which is interesting as a speaker, but it's just better for the time and the season that I'm at with my kids. So the old Jenny, push, more. And then also kind of like a lot of the old Jenny was like more shame-based. The new Jenny's more freedom, allow, let them, Mel Robbins, let them. And just a lot more grace-filled. But this is actually the impetus for the 4 books that I wrote. So the first book I wrote is called Thrive. I should have my books in the screen.
I was going to say, oh yeah, you're at the school, so they're not next to you.
I could go they're in the next room and I could come back, but do you want me to do that?
Yes. Oh. I'm a visual person. Yeah, you go right ahead.
Are you sure? Do I pause anything? Is it okay?
No, we're live. That's fine.
Okay, perfect.
Run, Jenny, run! No, I love the idea. Okay, let's see what we covered. The courageous leaders, the school leaders, the peer professionals. Like there's so many important people. Again, not just in the schools, but people like us with our own messages and stuff. How can we align ourselves with other leaders that can help us share this message? And that's what Dr. Jenny's doing. When she's getting into schools, she's helping to create more leaders that can help share this message. That might not be their core message, but since it's something that they've experienced, her message is still being shared through those other leaders. This is why the heart-centered leadership is so important. Look, she's back. Don't worry. I talked the whole time you were gone. This is why I was hired to do this.
Okay, so the first book I wrote was on gratitude.
Oh,
in the book, it's my personal story.
Yeah.
And then I have pages that are actually a journal page with a specific quote. And gratitude is an interesting thing because there's certain days that we're not grateful for anything. But what's on the page here is what's something that you're looking forward to. So I say in the book, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer on December 26, 2017.
Oh, wow.
It's not something I wrote in my gratitude journal, but I could have optimism and look forward to the appointment on January 2nd. And then the surgery on the 12th. And then my dad passed away on February 1st. And then I realized I would have to do this protocol February 28th. So these days are markers in our lives. All of us have a story. All of us have landmark moments where a line was drawn in the sand. And by March, I've lost my hair. I'm standing in front of a ballroom of 500 people, and I'm just still, I'm alive. I'm here. I've got a message to share. But in reflection of that crazy 3 months of time where I was like, I'm going to survive. Oh my gosh, I'm still here. What did this have to teach me? I just felt such a spiritual awakening, such a wake-up call to all of the good things that were around me. The fact that I had great healthcare, that I had some really big things I needed to change in myself, about being irritable, restless, discontent, resentful. So just huge shifts in like forgiveness and prayer, and huge shifts in energy in terms of all of those days and weeks. And there's different stories that I tell in the book about the valet guy during my radiation time. And
Aw.
I decided to make friends with him because I would get there for the very first appointment at 7 a.m. And radiation is quick. It takes you longer to get there than you're actually under the, and so just how can you, and then I had his $5 tip every single time I was there, and just creating a relationship with him and finding out who he is, so that the focus was, that go-giver concept of even in a challenging situation, we can also think of others. And so that was that book. And then I just wanted to get really playful with all of my teacher stuff. And this is a theme post cancer of just like, let's have some fun. Like, let's move our bodies differently. I had noticed that I'd become very sedentary, which happens in the midst of driving your kids around and sitting at sporting events and writing books, but just like some ways in which each chapter, like the tagline for this book is like, when the bum is numb, the brain is dumb.
As I've been sitting on my butt for like 4 hours now.
I know.
2.5, I guess.
Well, you're interacting with different people though, and you'll go for a walk after this, right? But I'm
going to go swimming, but yeah.
Yeah. In most situations, we're just sitting too long, and that's why we feel the sense of boredom. And then I did want to track, because I've gotten over 100 schools that I've been in.
Oh, nice.
And I mean, literally 1,000 schools, 127 of those principals have gotten Principal of the Year. And so this is the Climb experience. And so it's courage, learner's mindset, integrity, mastery, belonging. And so I followed their journey. Susan Brenz, Julie Ademic, and Chris Hecker. So those are my books. And before cancer, I was under a different umbrella working for somebody. And I was like, I'm going to do this myself. And I'm going to set my own schedule and my own boundaries and parameters. And I'm going to write about the things that I am most passionate about. So that's what I'm doing. I've got a couple more in me. So that's the journey. That's the path so far.
Oh, you need to tell us about these other ones that you still have in you.
Well, it's kind of like, so I've dedicated each of my books like to my girls, my son. Yeah. This came from my son who's ADHD, who's like bounced it off the walls. He's so bored at school because it's like, when's recess? Let's go. Like, what are we doing? And so I dedicated this book to him. So my husband was like, when am I going to get a book dedicated to me? And I was like, that story of meeting my husband is absolutely, it's in the file and it needs to be brought forth in a book, which is, why wait? Find your soulmate today. What do you want? What do you not want? Yeah. And then get out there and do your experimenting. I wrote my dissertation and I thought everything was an experiment.
Yeah.
I thought everything could be studied. And so before I was just kind of haphazardly dating people. And what I did with my husband is I wrote down my list of, 386 items I wanted in my husband and put it down to the top 5. Yes. And then it was like a job interview. It's like, you either have these 5 items or you don't. So I'm not going to get into any more 2-year relationships that are going nowhere.
Yes.
We're going to make God at the very top of my personal list and faith. Then we're going to talk about the attraction, that we're going to talk about the health and wellness. We're going to talk about money. I don't want some slouchy person. I've already been a principal, made money. Like I'm flying around the country. Like I'm not taking on your debt, bro. Like, so those are my non-negotiables, right? So your money has to be in order. Your faith has to be in order. Obviously there has to be chemistry, and then wanting to have kids and a family, obviously is super important. And, so you dial into those things that are most important, and all of a sudden that brain, your reticular activating system, starts to bring those exact things right to you. You know what we do in life is when we don't really go directly to the source of what we want, we start skirting around things, and it's just keeps taking us so long. It's like, what do you really want? What do you really want? Go directly to that. Like in Sci-Fair, I was like, you know what? I actually want to go directly to the associate superintendent and meet them, because I'd like to continue doing a lot more work in this district. So I'm not going to ask this person or ask that person. I'm actually going to set up a meeting with that person, and we're going to keep this energy going, because I've made an investment in the district. There's literally thousands of people in this school district that have been impacted by my work. Let's keep it going,
Yeah.
So let's go directly to the source. When we don't know what we want, well, any path will get us anywhere. And we don't know where we're actually wanting to be. So
yeah,
I want to have movement and joyful engagement learning in my workshops. I want to work with people that are on a pathway to become principal of the year, or bloom where they're planted and have an incredible school site. And all along that way, I want us to remember the abundance, the gratitude, the optimism, all the things we have past, present, and future to be grateful for. That's the recipe for thriving, right? So yeah, by speaking it, interacting with it, that's the journey. That's the journey I'm on. So the book with my husband is going to be like, I don't even know the working title yet, but it's like, Why Wait? Create Your Soulmate. So you get those 5 items. And then I started one summer, I went on 100 dates.
Oh,
100 dates. So what this does for a woman and a man.
I think the book is going to be called 100 Dates.
Oh, okay. I like it. I like it.
Because then people are like, wait, what?
100 dates? Now, there was a time in our world, I don't think it exists anymore, where people went on speed dating rounds.
No, it exists.
I want to be clear that I'm counting like those 38 people in my 100. What it does though is it frees you up to like, I've got a breakfast date, a lunch date, and a dinner date. And then tomorrow I'm meeting somebody for brunch, So when you get to a certain age, people are like setting you up, and there's pressure. Dun, dun, dun. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Lorraine has set us up, and it's Valentine's Day, right? Like, let's go. And so I want to talk about the story and how I was a researcher, and basically you can find out not in 2 years or 6 years or 8 years, but if you focus in and your 5 non-negotiables, you sit down on that date and you're kind of in an interview process. And every day really is an interview, whether it's for your job or whatever. It's like, how do you want to show up in your life and be that partner that you first married? Be that person that, was so excited about that job and now is like elbow disease, It's like, what about that person in the interview chair? What about that person on that first date? What about that person that first time you did that workshop and like sparks were flying everywhere, That first time you learned how to ride a bike. When we think about our first time, I don't know, there's just something there, that the excitement, the energy, just to remember. And, sometimes learning is remembering why we're doing what we're doing, the values that we have with it, right? Because like, I'm 20 years into my marriage now. We have 3 kids. We have a very full life. We've had ups and downs. He's had a spouse go through breast cancer. We've had parents pass away. We've had, sibling pass away. We've had all the things that people go through in life in variety of genres and flavors. And, you come back to those 5 core values. You know what? My husband has a strong faith, and that's the core of everything. We can't rely on people. We have to rely on a higher power of some sort. Call it whatever you want. And then, money is a huge thing. People that have money problems, eesh. So our money is straight. We have 3 kids. We wanted to have kids and make that commitment. And then just keeping that spark alive, in terms of your intimacy, which intimacy doesn't just mean sex. Intimacy is into me, you see. I feel seen and heard, and I'm connected. So,
No,
Laura?
I wanted to talk about that. No, I'm laughing a little bit because today's Valentine's. So huge topic for many people right now.
Sure.
But also at the same time, my husband's like, what do you want to do for Valentine's? My daughter has one of those robot babies.
Yeah.
that turns on at 4, and she's so sweet. Her teacher's like, turn it on at 3. She's like, no, mom might still be live. She's like, wait another hour, make sure mom's got her work done. And I was like, oh, you were thinking about me. That's so sweet.
Yeah.
But no, I started to giggle because my husband's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want you to wrap me in a fuzzy blanket like a sushi roll. I want you to hold me like a baby and feed me either like Cheesies or Cool Ranch Doritos while we watch a movie. So he's like, okay.
Let's do it. Check, and check.
So I can't wait to be wrapped in the fuzzy blanket, all warm, all snuggled, and being fed.
That's right, because you've been doing this. You've been just like back to back to back to back.
But this feeds my soul.
Yeah.
I love this.
Laura, tell me more about what you do beyond this podcast, this live thing. What are you up to?
Well, I talk about courage too. I really do stand for courageous connection. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot in common there. And what I was saying while you were gone was that you are surrounding yourself with courageous leaders. Mm-hmm. And by communicating with the leaders, you're actually amplifying your message by having them have the experience of your message while sharing it.
Right.
So that relates so much to what I do. I take this idea of courageous connection, which really means that if you're trying to share a message based off of personal experience, it means that in order to get them to have a relationship with you, you're actually needing a relationship with that version of you that went through the thing that you're now trying to help other people with.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes massive courage to look into yourself, to be able to see that, hear that, the know, like, and trust.
Yep.
Care about that version of yourself just as they are.
Yep.
Which is a lot of courage. It's a lot of self-leadership. You mentioned self-regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Like the mental health side of things is totally my jam. And then the end result of that is people like you and I are trying to share a message and share our story. But most of the time it tends to happen from a place of pain.
Yeah.
Or they're avoiding the vulnerability within their story. That is where all the gems are. Like if you're not sharing the gems, then people can't see what the value is.
Right.
Or if you don't care about and talk to that old version of yourself and love that version of yourself, you're unconsciously telling your audience that they are making you uncomfortable and that you don't care about them and love them as they are.
Yeah.
Whether we say those words or not doesn't matter, but that's the feeling because there's the disconnection.
Yeah.
But it's people like you and I who are like, okay, we need that self-regulation. We need that inner courage. We need to create our own leadership so that when we share the things and do the things and say the things that we want, it's coming from that greater foundation of love from within first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I think this is so powerful. Like when we think about avatars and focus audiences and how our websites and who are we writing to, you're talking to a version of yourself that is in the past.
Yep.
And you are embracing and loving that
Yeah.
process. And, you know, I literally just told the audience today, I said, I said, this is going to sound so bizarre, but getting cancer was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because
Yeah.
it really made me stop and pause
Mhm.
and just get present to, you know, my life instead of going, hurry, indecision. I also had a big part of my ego die, you know, because I'm a kid from like the 90s, right? Like I still was in like the principal is the hero of the school.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, this was the age of like, you know, Mr. Carter and, you know, just all these movies that were made about like, you know, this turnaround school or just this
Yeah.
educator.
Sister Act.
And-
Oh my God. One of my favorite movies.
Which one?
Sister Act 2.
Okay.
Mhm.
Or like Mr. Holland's Opus, you know, or like the movies, like Ron Clark is my age, you know. Ron Clark has a movie that it was about him, and you know, just the power of educators, the power of people to pour into us, mentor us, and yeah.
So oh my God, I love this conversation. I want to talk to you so much more. But at the same time, I want to be mindful of how much time we have left for the interview.
Yeah.
So at this point, I want to ask you, of course, where do we find you?
Oh,
And
sure.
your favorite way to communicate?
Yeah, you can find me at jennyseverson.com, www.jenny, Jenny,
Mhm.
S as in Sam, E as in Edward, V as in Victor, ERSON.com. That's my website. And then I love connecting I'm in all the places. LinkedIn, Jenny Severson, and I'm on X, Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. I'm on Instagram. You know, as my business grew, I've had to sort of separate the climb experience and my personal stuff. But you can find me in a green shirt on Facebook. It says Thrive with Jenny. That is the page.
Is green your color?
Green is normally my color. You would not believe it's 40 degrees in Houston right now. Otherwise, I would be wearing my green. I usually wear green
Yeah.
every single event. I have so many green shirts, but
I
today
know.
I'm like, okay, I got to bring the green.
I
Magically.
forgot that if I painted my wall green, that I couldn't wear the green because then I'd just be a floating head. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. So, you know, or just call me, text me 608-347-7325. I would love to work with people that are, you know, going through some stuff and just open to being green and growing as opposed to ripe and rotting. And, you know, I think that's the journey that I'm on for sure is, you know, just becoming more of the person that I am here to be. Less pretending, more courage, more authenticity, and just holistic living. So yeah, Laura, thank you so much.
This was such a delight. I do like to hold space at the end of an interview, just in case there's something on your head or in your heart that you just need to share with people. What might that be?
You know, I think I would just close with saying that, you know, all of us have had moments where we bought something new, we got a new car or something, and then all of a sudden we start seeing that car, that purse, that jacket. It's like that reticular activating system is just going. And so I just, as you celebrate Valentine's Day and just more love in the world, more love in our hearts, that you would just look for what is good and loving today. Even if your husband doesn't bring you flowers or do any of the things, acceptance is the answer to all our problems at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And just, you know, as long as you're good in your own skin, all is well. So just that soul connection and put that as the focus. Yeah, thanks.
That sounds absolutely lovely. So I will call this the official close of the interview, but at the same time, I invite you to stay for the few more minutes that we have. I like to use this time as a recap. And usually when my co-host is here, unfortunately, she had a meeting. She's like, I'm sorry, I have to leave early. It's fine. Life happens. Totally get it.
Yeah.
I like to just highlight some of the wonderful things that we did talk about. So
Sure.
I'm going to ask you, Dr. Jenny, what was something that stood out to you in our conversation today?
Gosh, Laura, it was so free flowing. It was like we didn't have an agenda. We were just kind of in the space of flowing. And I love how you mentioned, the 3 words to describe my work is about, faithful, it's energetic, and it's about leadership. And I believe that everybody is a leader. We all have agency and ownership. I'm so grateful that I got to kind of talk about the 3 big pillars of my current work, which happened after I, faced my own death and demise. And thank God I'm still here. So wanted to just, recap the gratitude and optimism, the playbook, and that movement is life. And then the climb, the focus on, courage, learner's mindset, leadership, integrity, mastery, and belonging. And we all need a place to belong. And also we need a place to bring the last 2%, of things that we don't want to share in all of the places and spaces that we're in. And so a lot of the work that I do allows people to do that. I think just those were some of the big highlights. I think what I loved about our conversation is what my work has always been about is amplifying a story that people can connect with and carry some strategies back into their life and amplify those, and that ultimately those will impact children. And so at the end of the day, 100 years from now, I'm not going to be here, but the people in my workshop right now who are 21 years old and the people that they're teaching, they will be around. So, it's about legacy and maximizing those moments.
I got goosebumps on that one. Every time we talk about the ripple effect of legacy or the ripple effect of impact, I'm just like, it just reminds me that even though you and I have had this conversation and I have no idea what happens afterwards, there could be one person watching. That one person tells somebody else. Maybe they use it in their life. They affect their family. Then maybe, just like you said, their family teaches somebody else. I don't know any idea about that whole ripple effect.
Yeah.
But when I think about it and even just think about the future of it, that is so inspiring. And I know, like, at this point, there's a lot of shifts happening on social media. People are just going from one to another, or they're just changing the way that they do things because there's so much change happening everywhere at the moment.
Right.
That it's nice to know that there are changes happening, that they are thinking about how they want to show up and how they want other people to see them.
Right.
And how they want to move forward. Even if nothing was wrong before, even if nothing needed to be quote unquote fixed.
Right.
It's just like a reevaluation of, I could be doing things better or more aligned or something that makes me feel so much joy versus just doing it because that's what I'm supposed to.
Right.
I
And
love all those shifts.
Just a recalibration, know? Yeah.
So one of the things that I liked about what you said was you said that the old Jenny was shame-based and that the new Jenny is grace-based.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's powerful. Because how many of us get stuck in that shame or the guilt? And then how often do we give ourselves grace?
And like what you were saying, Laura, about like it literally becomes in our subconscious, like we don't even know that we're doing it anymore. And so to bring that out to the surface and name it to tame it, be curious and not furious, work a rigorous, like my side of the street, where am I responsible for this? And not in a way that's beating us up, but in a way that's saying, oh, I actually have agency, efficacy, ownership over this. I could shift this. I don't have to interact with that person anymore. I can send them love, affinity, friendship. I can move my attention towards where that energy, like I said earlier, that faithful, energetic leader thrives.
Mhm.
And just put my attention and energy over there. Because you get to a certain point in life, you just don't realize, like, oh man, this person is actually really weighing me down. And so it's a consciousness.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I feel when I got off that meeting? Who do I want to interact with more? What are the ways in which I can find more of that type of synergy? And that's I think that's the joy and wonder of life. So
Mhm.
seeking that out and seeing what God does, because really, all of us are just, he's ahead of us, behind us, with us. Whatever version of God is resonates with you, there is something bigger going on here than just, Jenny Severson's ideas. I'm a vessel, as I think all of us are, for goodness and light. So,
Aw. I appreciate this so much.
yeah, for sure. And then, so how does this work? Are you
So-
going to edit this thing out, or how
Oh,
does it?
event. So I'm constantly live all day until
Yeah.
all of my interviews are over.
Okay.
I'm expecting a guest here any second.
Yep.
And then we will be in contact, because I know, like, we're starting to do new things. And one of the new things is to split up the live.
Yeah.
If you really want to share like 4 hours and what used to be 4.5 hours
Yeah.
with everybody all the time, that's a lot. So they will be breaking it up.
Okay.
They'll be giving you the link to your specific interview, this one. And of course, there's something new happening where we're doing 40-minute interviews now, which is why I was like, official interview is over, because we have a maximum of 42 minutes where it's going.
Sure.
So I'm like, if I could end you around 40
Perfect.
and you happen to talk to 42, it still works. So that's great. Yeah.
And right, like we live in the TEDx world. So we want to do, 7, 10, 15 minutes is kind of a lot for people, and then YouTube shorts. And I don't know. I love it. You need to have all of it. It's like the buffet line,
It really is.
I would like this snippet. Oh, let's do a longer thing. Yeah.
And that's why I was like, okay, after that's over, we'll just recap. That's great for reels or posts or something like that.
Great.
And yeah. So
Yeah,
thank you, Dr. Jenny. My next guest is now behind the scenes. So thank you so much. This was lovely.
Thank you too. Yes.
Enjoy
Take care.
your
God
day.
bless.
Bye. So next guest, Susan, just give me a thumbs up if you're ready to join me on stage. It's just you and I playing today.
Yay! Hi, Laura. How are you?
Good. So what do all your signs say behind you? Dream, create, inspire, purpose-driven mission. It's tiny on my screen. Good vibes, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Life something?
Love.
Oh, life, love. There you go. Because otherwise I'm going to try to read them the whole time. So I'm like, just start off and then I can stop thinking about it.
Yeah. So
Welcome, Susan.
I feel like this is just a couple of my values reflected on my back wall here, which I feel like you'll see showing up in our conversation shortly.
Oh, it has been in the conversation all day.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny you mentioned values, because the opening question that I start every interview off with is a way to kind of like sneakily get to know you, your business, your message, and your values without ever asking you any of those questions.
Amazing. Kind of like looking at my wall. We're starting the game already. I love it.
So here's my opening question then, Susan.
Hit me.
If you could have other people describe you in just 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be?
Passionate.
Mm-hmm.
Empathetic.
Okay.
And a change agent.
A what agent?
A change agent.
Ooh, oh, you are definitely my kind of person. Okay.
I feel like that. Yeah, I feel like that kind of wraps me up in a nutshell too.
Okay. So the obvious follow-up question here is, how do those words even though I spelled them wrong. There we go. Passionate, empathetic, and change agent. How do they play a role in the core message that you have for people?
Ooh, well, I feel like my famous tagline is your highest potential is my passion. Let's unleash it together. And so in terms of our core messaging, I think it's a lot about that high performance leadership coaching, right? It's all about high impact and people who are trying to change the world, right? Legacy leaders. And so very passionate crowd of individuals that I get to serve. And I always like to say it takes one to serve one.
Oh, okay, I'm writing that one too.
So if I don't bring that heat, you better believe I am not going to be engaging that type of audience all that well, you know? And I also like to say at this age and stage of my career, because I've been doing this 2 decades, 20 years, I want to work with passionate people because I enjoy being in a passionate state. Like I said, this is the first word I used in terms of how I think people would describe me. I'm very high octane. I'm very high energy, but it's because I live my life in such an aligned way in terms of my values. And if I'm not feeling passionate about the things that I value, then maybe I'm not pursuing the right values, you know? Because I believe that when we pursue our values, that's where we get that high ROI, high frequency emotional state as a reward, you know?
This whole show feels like a reward. I'm surrounded by people who are passionate, who are change makers, who are asking questions and attempting to do things differently. And they get driven and motivated by that. Feed me more of those people.
Right.
And then on top of that, I was like, I get to see and hear the potential of those people. Since you brought that up, I'm just going to bring it right back. I get to see the humanness and the heart-centeredness and the actual caring about human beings, because that has been a theme this whole week. That we are all here, especially the conversations this week. We just want to treat people like human beings and serve human beings.
Well, this is this whole empathy number 2 word that I used in terms of how people would describe me is like, I'm an empath. I don't know if anybody has used that terminology on your show before.
We have.
But an empath is somebody who has a lot of empathy. I feel like that's my superpower, is that I have a ton of empathy. And it's why our style of leadership coaching and leadership development and training is what we call Leadership 2.0. It's the human-centric, heart-centric style of best practices here in 2025 in the leadership development space. Most people don't understand that being heart-centric and human-centric is how we actually curate the highest performing teams on the planet.
Yep.
But it's actually true, is that when we relate to one another in these human-centric ways, this is where we optimize human beings, right?
Yeah. So when I first got into business, I did not think that there was a successful business that was heart-based, like truly heart-based. There were ones that pretended like they were, but you could kind of feel that it was off until I really got into the space and started following some people, and I met Brendan Burchard.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second. He is very much the playful, the I don't care if I can't dance, like just absolutely loves people.
Yes.
Totally heart-centered and massively successful.
Yep.
And I went, so it is possible.
Yeah, I think we're seeing all kinds of models of possibility show up in our world. More so now than ever. I want to say that this is starting to become, I think, more and more of commonplace here in 2025. Yeah. Ever since the pandemic, I've seen a real uptick in terms of the human-centric approach to all things work, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. We actually just mentioned a couple interviews ago about we decided to call it the mental health pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Of everything that had happened.
Oh, yeah.
But what that usually does is anytime there's hardship, we have to persevere. We have to be resilient. There's a lot of innovation that happens because we're forced into it. It's like change or go behind everything else. So,
Yeah, it humanized a lot of things. Like now you're seeing me working from home as an example, right? And like it really humanizes us in the context of work for people to actually start to see us as real human beings, not just like corporate ties and suits. So
I think this is the closest I've gotten to a blazer in like forever. But it's like a dress coat thing. I actually really like it.
It's really pretty. I love the red on you, obviously with the red hair. Yeah. Love it.
You know what? I thought that red was always a horrible color because I had red hair, and then all the comments was the exact opposite.
Yeah, no, it's
but to bring that back in, it just I wanted to bring it somewhere else. Oh, the old version of me thought that business was very much the wear the blazer, wear the button-up shirt, the tie, just like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually we get to the point where we realize we don't have to do that, that it can look different.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's that phase of trying to figure out what works for us.
Yes, I know.
Can you tell us about that phase for you?
Well, I think it is a lot of what I personally have gone through, my own reformation. I think ever since hitting my 40s, I want to say, which I think is very common for a lot of women, is that
I just hit 40. Yes.
Right. So we start to embrace our authenticity a little bit more. And I feel like the pandemic really helped with that as well. So for me personally, like before the pandemic, I was getting all gussied up in my monkey suit 3-4 days a week to go downtown to my office in the financial district. And it was like a whole bunch of other monkey suits, you know, and ever since the pandemic, I was able to pivot my practice online. We now serve a global audience. We scaled. So we have 10 coaches and then all these different parts of the world serving this global audience of ours now. But for me personally, I stuck the landing in terms of working from home, which has just been amazing in terms of me being able to step into more and more of my authenticity. I feel like it's made it so that I can be around for my daughter and all her needs more, you know? But I think it's getting over that hump and showing us that all these rules that we bought into pre-pandemic in terms of how we need to operate in a business context are simply just not true. We've proven that this model of possibility is also a legitimate model in terms of how we can work. And the thing that I love to talk about as a change agent is just how powerful a strategy that is for leaders to embrace their authenticity. This is where a leader is going to have the most influence because it's where the leader is going to be able to elicit the most trust and credibility.
Yeah.
Right? Is because they're actually showing up as their real selves, which gives everybody else permission to do the same.
Exactly. So let's touch on that potential for a little bit more. In your line of work, what is it that you keep seeing is stopping people from giving themselves permission to even look at, let alone take action on gaining and growing their potential?
Well, I think I'm going to hit you with some stats that are very fascinating in terms of what prevents us from giving ourselves permission. So, I think most adults get stuck in what's called the part of the maturation process known as the social self. And this is where we become these conditioned versions of ourselves, typically in our teenage years, you know, where it's all about who do I need to be to show up in the world and gain acceptance and belonging in the world, right? Acceptance and belonging to my tribe. And all of that it registers as social safety, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously that's not a space and place where we're giving ourselves permission to live authentically and our own sense of truth and authenticity. It's who do I need to be so I can get accepted by these people and so these people will like me. Right. And so I can keep these people pleased, or all of that is what disrupts our ability to actually show up authentically. We actually need to mature out of that stage into what's known as self-authorization. And that's a stage in the adult maturation process that less than 1/3 of adults actually reach.
I was going to say, I was like, is that why most adults act like children?
Yes, it is. In fact, why I think a lot of adults are still trying to prove themselves. You know, I see a ton of imposter syndrome in my practice, especially, you know, I work with a ton of female leaders who are so grateful to be accessing these positions of leadership and power and influence in the world. But if they haven't matured out of their social self, then all of a sudden being thrust into that spotlight of visibility with all that pressure and expectation, it's going to really start to expose their insecurities, you know, in terms of who am I to be in the spotlight saying these things. So I think that is what gives every leader, whether you're female or male, I think it gives every single leader the opportunity to actually see where their insecurities are hiding out underneath the carpet. And that's what gives us the opportunity to start to learn about how to self-authorize, you know, and give ourselves permission to just show up in the world as we are.
I want to learn all about it, a wise one. Self-authorization.
Have you ever heard of that terminology before?
I have.
Yeah. So being the authority, seeing ourselves as the authority, it's like in our process, we talk about stepping into self-leadership, right? And starting to see ourselves as the authority and not the world, like all due respect, but what do you know about what I need or what is important to me or how I should dress or how I should show up in the world? Like I'm an adult now. I should probably be the authority in that, right?
Yeah. I still think of me as a child thinking that my parents had all the answers. Anybody but me basically had the answers. So I even had this best friend in elementary school, and whenever I had a question, I would just ask her, and if she didn't know the answer, she would make up an answer, but she never told me she made up an answer. There were a few times where she gave me an answer which was completely wrong.
Yeah.
When I used that answer thinking it was the right thing, it did not turn out very well.
I would imagine it wouldn't. No. But it shows you how susceptible we are when we're in a social self stage. It's like we outsource our power to the world. We've now given the world permission to tell us who we are or who we're not, or what is true or what is not true, or what things mean or what they don't mean. And that's a very dangerous place for us to stay. Like I get it for my daughter who's 13. It's how she's able to survive high school and navigate all of that social pressure that comes with being a high school student. But it can be really disruptive when you become an adult and you start to get into the world and make decisions about your life and your work and your family and your appearance and right? That can get a little bit, I think it can lead to a lot of suffering.
I went out to dinner with a new local friend of mine. I just moved here a year ago, so I'm making some new friends. And she described turning 40 as the F it 40s. I was like, ooh, I really like that because it does kind of describe what it feels like.
Yeah. Like everything, all those rules out the window, right?
Yeah, you're just like, I feel 40 to me feels like a door has been opened to a room that I never even got to see before. And it's like this opening, this refinement, I don't really want to call it like a distillation, but think like an aged fine wine, right? Where it just keeps getting better. That's kind of what life feels like now. Because I do feel myself moving away from that, using your terms, the social self, and getting to know what that self-authorization feels like, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, and I think it's a process like anything. Yeah. It's a process of evolution, which is kind of the purpose of life, right? It's not a destination.
No.
We're not supposed to arrive and check it like a to-do item on our to-do list. I think what most people don't know to be true about that evolution is it's massively fulfilling to be just in the process of self-discovery and learning more and more and more about who you truly are and who you, as it turns out, aren't.
Yeah.
Or maybe aren't anymore, you know, like maybe you have outgrown aspects of who you thought you were or who you wanted to be even, you know. I think for me, I'm obsessed with this whole concept of freedom. and expansiveness that comes from being in love with that journey and that process. Is that every single time I show up in that process on the daily, I get more and more free and more expansive in terms of the possibilities for my life. Right. And so, yeah, I hope that's not a destination, because I would never want that ride to end.
No. So if we take these change makers, these change agents, those disruptors, it's kind of like the rebel energy, and we put them into those courageous leadership roles, where do you find so far that people get the most traction? And maybe it's a habit, maybe it's a tool, I don't know, whatever that is, to help get them from that social self into the self-authorization.
I think it's really the work that I specialize in. My area of specialty is in something called mindset strategy architecture.
Ooh.
So that's all about, my mastery is in neurolinguistic programming, which is all about how to reprogram our belief systems, right? Our belief systems are this set of rules that we've been riffing on, Laura and I, over the last 20 minutes or so, right? The rule book we were chucking in our 40s. All of those socially conditioned rules that get programmed into our autopilot that are responsible for governing our decisions. Most people don't realize it, but on the daily, 95 to 97% of our choices, bam, 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 all day long, are just completely autopilot, being governed by those belief systems. And where do those belief systems get established and programmed? When we're like less than 10 years old. That's really where our self-concept forms, you know? So my passion is in helping, you know, human beings, especially adults, recognize that maybe they should take a look at that playbook of beliefs in terms of the mindset strategies that are governing their autopilot. That will tell the whole story about the level of results that a client is generating in any area of their performance. And so if we're trying to move from a social self to a self-authorized version of self, it's beliefs work. It's starting to find on the daily where all those limited rules are hanging out in our experience, you know, where all those socially conditioned beliefs are still hanging out in my self-concept, you know, like telling me who to be on the daily, even though I don't really resonate with being that person anymore. So doing that type of beliefs work is like how we are able to find the limited beliefs that were socialized and conditioned in us by the world. And that's the emancipation process, right? Where we're like starting to free our authentic self from hiding out underneath those limited perspectives.
Yeah. Oh, I had an image playing in my mind as you were describing that. I'm picturing a bunch of primaries having this meeting. And they all decide to write the book, all the rules of life.
Yeah.
And then they go to every adult and they're like, nope, this is the new rule book. This is the new rule book.
Yeah.
And then you go through and you're like, my sister gets all the chocolate. Wait, what?
Yeah. No. Can I contest one of these rules, please?
Not allowed changing any of the rules.
Yeah, so that's my favorite thing to do with clients, is to show them where they're not free and where they're not in alignment with their truth and their authenticity, and then showing them how to actually free themselves from all that limited programming. You know, that's what I call the emancipation, because it's like you're really starting to help somebody live in a lot more expansive, free way if you're able to help them identify what is true and what is simply no longer true for them. You know,
how do you help them identify what some of those beliefs are?
Well, I think you can really see where a client is roadblocked, shall we say, in terms of their belief systems, in a couple of different obvious ways. The most obvious way is to see where, when they come through my door, where they're making decisions that aren't in alignment with the things that they want. You know, so it's very typical in a coaching process to set goals and to come through the door talking about what it is that you want to work towards achieving that you can't currently access, or you aren't currently able to produce in terms of a result because you just can't make that quality of decision, you know? Yeah. So I think it starts there, and seeing where they are describing that they're unhappy with their current level of results, and then helping them be able to illuminate and identify the pattern or programming of decision making that is actually generating that, and then using that as an entry point into where those limited beliefs are hanging out in their subconscious mind. A lot of the times you'll see it via where their red flag emotions are showing up, you know?
Yes.
So that's where I started when I was saying, you know, I want to feel passionate. I want to work with passionate people because that's where I get the highest ROI emotionally, is when I'm living in alignment with my values. Well, where a client is not living in alignment with their truth in terms of what is important to them at their core, their emotions are going to tell them the whole story.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have emotions like frustration or agitation or feeling kind of blah or meh, or they're going to feel like if their imposter syndrome's showing up on the play, they're going to feel self-doubt, they're going to feel anxiety, they're going to be insecure. Who am I to be in the spotlight? Those emotions tell the whole story about where their belief systems are running interference on the play. Right? In other words, where their belief systems are not actually reflective of who they truly are and their true capacity.
Yeah.
So that's how we do that excavation.
And then pairing that with still doing the emotional outsourcing. I remember my mom is very full of anxiety, always has been. But when my daughter was younger, she would run up to my daughter and freak out anytime she could have been hurt. And my daughter would just look at her to figure out which emotion she was supposed to have in that moment.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like, you have your own emotions, hence the emotional outsourcing. It ties in so much with these beliefs that sometimes it can dictate which emotions we're supposed to feel, even though we don't actually feel it. So now there's this separation of emotions, and we're trying to figure out what it is we feel, but we feel 10 different things at the same time. And all of a sudden we're overwhelmed.
I think that's where it's really, really useful to have a coach. Right? Because I think that can be an extremely overwhelming prospect, trying to make sense of all of that in your own lane, in your own limited capacity, because we're human beings. We don't really see ourselves all that clearly, you know? So to have somebody who can empathetically hold a safe space for you to be able to like just process your way through that, and then help to give some sort of a structure, framework, process, strategy, you know, to how you can actually process your way through that effectively and find the growth ops within that processing.
Oh, yes.
That's, to me, that's everything for that type of person to be able to have that level of support, I think is really important.
So good. I keep an emotional wheel on my phone.
Nice.
And I used to like put a dot, I would edit it all the time, and I'd put a dot of a random color on the emotions that I felt. And every time I did it, I would see I'm feeling like 10 things at a time.
Yeah.
Like, this is intense. But then I began asking myself, okay, which of those emotions are mine? Which of those emotions am I accepting or projecting on other people? And you just kind of start to minimize it. You go, oh.
Very telling, isn't it?
I just started doing it again this week. And I'm like, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like emotions are intel. I know we have such busted up associations with talking about feelings, and like, especially I get a lot of pushback as like a high performance leadership coach, you know, it's like, you want me to talk about my emotions? Yes, please. I do. That's like, it's going to tell me everything in terms of the data and intel that is required to understand what is actually happening in your experience. It's the reason we have emotions as human beings, right? Is like, it's communicating some very significant, important information to us. But we're not often taught how to interpret that or what to do with that. And so, I think it's why I really believe in the power of coaching or therapy. To have somebody to teach you how to process effectively is one of the most important things for a human being to learn how to do effectively.
I used to call myself a mental health for high performance coach.
I love that.
To realize that as soon as I use those words, mental health, or I said emotion, or I said feeling, or anything like that, it's like people had their fingers in their ears going, la, 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 la,
Yeah. Well, especially high performers, right? Because like a lot of their associations are no pain, no gain, and like
The hustle culture.
it's like a lot of the associations that you're up against with that crowd, you know.
So I'm like, I'm just gonna change my title.
It's all about, that's why neurolinguistics programming was such a fascinating zone of study for me to get into, right? Because it's like so important how we communicate these things.
So the show is called Amplify Your Message. So I'd love to just shift gears because, oh my God, I love this so much. But I also want to know how it is that you have chosen to share your message.
Like in terms of what platforms am I on, or?
Sure, you can tell us about platforms. So like the typical is people like to get into speaking, writing, podcasting.
Oh, okay, yeah. So as a thought leader, I show up in a multitude of different ways over the last 20 years. The areas I'm most passionate about, I feel like right now, is we have a podcast at Elite High Performance Coaching, which is the company that I founded 20 years ago. And the podcast is called the Leadership Launchpad Program or Project. And it's a podcast that we've run since the start of the pandemic, actually, when we first launched this Leadership 2.0 mission to change the way the game is being played in life, leadership, and business. And doing it through this Leadership 2.0 methodology, which is this heart-centric, human-centric approach to curating high-performing teams and high-performing leaders that play their biggest impact game when the world needs it more than ever. So that's my favorite place to show up on the weekly, is in getting to interview the world's foremost experts on this stuff in the areas of heart-centric, human-centric, high-performance leadership. I feel like I've gotten a whole university level education out of doing that show, just sitting and getting to talk to these brilliant people every week. I also really enjoy just the depths of conversation that I get to have in terms of really understanding the hero's journey behind a lot of these folks, you know, in terms of, like I really see a through line in terms of the last 4 or 5 years of doing this this podcast of ours, in terms of what really is at the epicenter of all these legacy level leaders in the world is this purpose thing, you know, is them feeling like this is has been a calling that they've been able to respond to from a soul level, you know. So I love interviews for that reason, because you get to get, like we are, really deep into the human experience, which obviously is what fascinates me the most. I also am a Forbes contributing thought leader, so I really enjoy showing up there in terms of trying to change the way the collective consciousness is sort of relating to areas of leadership and leadership development and leadership training. I'm really passionate about empowering knowledge around what best practices actually look like here in 2025. And so, and then other ways that I show up as a thought leader is just, we do a lot of thought leadership through our website. We have a blog and a newsletter that goes out 3 times a week. We're very passionate in terms of our thought leadership on social media and all the different social media platforms. YouTube videos is something we're really getting into now that I feel like is symbolic of where we're at in 2025. I feel like most people now, when they want to learn about how or what or why, they don't go to Google as much. They go to AI or they go to YouTube. They go to ChatGPT or they go to YouTube and they type it in. And so, I'm really passionate about trying to be there when a leader is curious about going on this type of journey in terms of learning how to up level to 2.0 status, given that this is where the future of business clearly is leading us, you know, like the whole game has changed in terms of leadership development and training so much over the last decade. And I just feel like, I'm really passionate about making sure that we evolve fully to that point by the time I hit the rocking chair, you know?
The rocking chair. You mean the VR rocking chair.
I just think it's not lost on me that I'm a human-centric leadership coach at this time in the world and history. Like, I think we all see what's going on in the world, right? this is requisite. We have to go on this journey. We have to improve the ways that we're showing up and relating to one another. You know, we're in a huge, like you said, the epidemic or the pandemic of mental health. We're in a huge mental health crisis. We're in a huge economic crisis in terms of what we're seeing in some of the biggest economies in the world and what's being predicted to happen in those economies over the next couple of years.
Yep.
Look at our world. Look at Mother Nature. We're seeing some of the worst weather, storms, and natural disasters that we've ever seen. Like, we have to go on this journey as a collective before I leave this world. I am like so clear in terms of why I've been put in this position of leadership and influence at this time and space and place in history. It is not lost on me that this is what the world needs more than it's ever needed it.
So I'm going to ask you a question that I haven't asked at least in a few days, because I've done a lot of interviews this week.
Yeah.
If you could share your message in any sort of creative way, and we have like a big list of ways that people share, like singing and dancing and art and music and cooking and like all the kinds of things. You could get creative and just be able to do it the way that you want to do it at the snap of a fingers. What kind of creative way would you love to be able to share your message?
Well, I love to flow and riff like this. So this is probably my favorite way to share my message. But if I had to do that in like an outside the box creative way, like on the spot.
Sure.
I don't know. I love music. So incorporating music in some way, shape, or form would probably be like one of the things that's coming to mind just off the cuff, because obviously I wasn't expecting this question.
Of course.
Is making playlists for some of my mastermind groups. You know, I love to make a good playlist that sort of with the music that sort of fits the vibe of the group itself in terms of the human beings that are in that locker room. And then also just in terms of the journey that we're going to go on, is it a journey of empowerment? Is it a journey of like, you know, recovery? Is it a journey of, I don't know, inspiration? But I do feel like music carries those frequencies, right?
It really does.
So pairing my thought leadership with music, I think that's a cool outside the box kind of idea. Don't ask me what that looks like aside from making a playlist for you and sharing it with you after this interview.
I would love the playlist. I love so much music. I will listen to, I think it's 17 different languages in almost any genre. Because to me, it's not so much about the words as it is the feeling and the vibe of the sounds together. I'm like, I don't even know what 16 of those languages are saying. But like, I feel what they're trying to get across. And I just needed to express myself the way that they're trying to help. So.
I love that music is that like universal language too. And that you don't even have to understand the actual language in order to understand what they mean. Or what they're trying to communicate, you know?
I had an interview with Maya, who's a singer, who said that she went to China and like she didn't expect anybody to understand an English song. She's like, so I really focused on how it is that I'm feeling and getting the feeling out in the words. And she's like, they clapped exactly when an English audience would clap. And not because I told them and not because of this and that, but they felt it. She was like, job accomplished. Like,
Well, only 7% of communication is verbal in terms of the words that we use. The other 93% is the nonverbal stuff, right? 55% is just our body language when we're singing it. And the other 38% is the energy and inflection and tonality when we're singing it. So that's what I love about music.
So good. So Susan, before we end our interview, I want to make sure that people know where to find you and, of course, your favorite way to communicate.
So if you're looking to connect with me in any way, shape, or form, I feel like the easiest way to do that is to come visit us at the website, elitehighperformance.com. I also mentioned our podcast, which goes live every Tuesday morning, every week. It's the Leadership Launchpad Project on all major podcast platforms. You can find the links to all these social media outlets I was referring to a second ago through our website in terms of our YouTube channel and where we're hanging out on LinkedIn or Instagram. And yeah, I feel like if you're curious to read any of the thought leadership articles that I mentioned, that's all at the website too. So yeah, I feel like those are the best places to come find me.
Nice. So then I always love to hold space at the end of an interview, just in case there's something on your mind or in your heart that you just need to share. So if there's anything that you need people to take away from this, what might that be?
I think it's just answering the call. I think to some degree, that piece that I riffed on a second ago in terms of how the world needs us all to step into this 2.0 level of leadership, not just if you're leading a big organization or a business of your own. I mean, we're all leaders because we're all leading ourselves when we show up in the world, make choices in the world that impact the world around us.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very important for anybody listening today who didn't actually think of themselves maybe as a leader when we were talking about these leadership things.
Yeah.
Newsflash, you're a leader in 2025. If you're leading your damn self, which all of us are as human beings, then I think we have to take responsibility for the ripple effect that ensues from the decisions that we make as we show up in the world, right? Because that is curating the world in which we live. And the world in which we live, as we were talking about a second ago, needs us. She needs us in so many different ways right now to take that call responsibly.
Yeah.
And so if anybody out there is feeling that call and resonating with that call and curious, just in terms of maybe what some of this journey even looks like that we've been talking about and referring to today and around self-authorization or your social self-insecurities, then please come book a free consult with me, hang out with me for a half an hour, and I guarantee it will change your life. I guarantee it. So yeah, I think that's the last thing I want to leave with your audience, which is where I started. Your highest potential is my passion. Let's unleash it together. Let's go.
Awesome. So I will call this the official close of your interview, but at the same time, we have a few minutes before the show is over. And what I like to do at the end of an interview is just kind of give a little bit of a recap of some of our favorite things. So I'm going to start with you, Susan. What is something that stood out to you in our conversation today?
I think this whole piece around self-authorization and how less than 1/3 of us actually reach that stage in the maturation process where we fully individuate, step into our authority, and get to realize all of that untapped potential. I think that this is for sure going to be one of the biggest takeaways for anybody listening, because how many people have actually heard of this self-authorization thing? You were over there scribbling notes yourself, right?
Oh, I got notes on everybody. It's also the very last page of my notebook, so I'm quite excited to start a new one.
So I feel like that's probably going to be the highlight in terms of the conversation that we had. And then the second piece is just in and around getting curious about your mindset, about the playbook of beliefs that's running the show in terms of the quality of life that you're living.
That was going to be my takeaway, was the 1/3 of adults are actually the self-authorization type adults. That was such a small number. But I do also want to highlight some of the things that you mentioned about how to help us identify some of those areas of beliefs which might need to be adjusted, like making decisions not in alignment with your goals, or the red flag emotions, or even just not living in your truth or being unhappy with the results that you're getting. These are situations that are like, you should probably take a minute and journal on this and look at yourself and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think learning how to hack into your belief systems it's a superpower, right? Because it's where you get to step to the helm in your self-leadership, and then it's where you actually get to start to co-create with this beautiful life that you're living, right? And you actually get to start to manifest more and more of the things that you actually want, that are actually going to lead to the way that you want to feel. I mean, we all have access to that level of agency when we become adults, but how many of us claim it? Less than 1/3. It's a tragedy when you think about that stat, really.
Take it.
Carpe diem.
Exactly. Susan, thank you so much. I'm going to just finish the day here, and I'll chat with you for a minute backstage. But what I want to say to everyone watching is thank you for joining us all week for bLU Talks Amplify Your Message. Susan just happened to be our very end guest for today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to the networking event. Just so that you know, the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of this month is the Experts Bootcamp. Do you want to get paid to speak? Do you want to learn how to get on a TEDx stage? Do you want to help or understand how to get help with the application form? Do you want to learn how to be on podcasts, top 5% podcast? Do you want to learn how to start a podcast, sell more books? We're going to be talking about all of that and much more at the Experts Bootcamp. And I just happen to be your host. I get to be MC. So it's like I get to talk to Dr. Jo Vitale, who I had a blast with last time. Lisa Nichols is going to be there. Corey pre-recorded an interview with Deepak Chopra. Like lots of amazing things happening.
Cool.
I cannot wait to see you. Just message us for the link and I can put it in the comments. Again, much love to everyone. Thank you again, Susan. And thank you to my co-host, Abby, for being here as long as she could today. We will see you soon.
Mwah.
And then I'm going to sing and dance and click end stream. Ready?
Bye, everyone.